Chapter 32. How is a leaf? I asked. I was waiting in the goldfish bowl and caught Yuri once he returned from the emergency ward. Stable, he said with a heavy sigh, which is about the best we can hope for. I'd like to see her. Olive or Alicia? I leave first. Yuri nodded. They want her to rest tonight, but in the morning I'll take you to her. What happened? Were you there? I presume Alicia was provoked. Yuri sighed again and shrugged. I don't know. A leaf was hanging around outside Alicia's studio. There must have been a confrontation of some kind. I have no idea what they were fighting about. Have you got the key? Let's go and have a look. See if we can find any clues. We left the goldfish bowl and walked to Alicia's studio. Yuri unlocked the door and opened it. He flicked on the light, and there on the easel was the answer we were looking for. Alicia's painting, the picture of the grove going up in flames, had been defaced. The word _ was crudely daubed across it in red paint. I nodded. Well, that explains it. You think Olive did it? Who else? I found Olive in the emergency ward. She was propped up in bed, attached to a drip. Padded bandages were wrapped around her head, covering one eye. She was upset, angry, and in pain. Fuck off, she said when she saw me. I pulled up a chair by the bed and sat down. I spoke gently, respectfully. I'm sorry, Olive. Truly sorry. This is an awful thing to happen. A tragedy. __ right. Now piss off and leave me alone. Tell me what happened. That _ took out my _. That's what happened. Why did she do that? Did you have a fight? You trying to blame me? I didn't do nothing. I'm not trying to blame you. I just want to understand why she did it. 'Cause she got a _ screw loose. That's why. It had nothing to do with the painting. I saw what you did. You defaced it, didn't you? Olive narrowed her remaining eye, then firmly closed it. That was a bad thing to do, Olive. It doesn't justify her response, but still, that ain't why she did it. Olive opened her eye and stared at me scornfully. I hesitated. No. Then why did she attack you? Olaf's lips twisted into a kind of smile. She didn't speak. We sat like that for a few moments. I was about to give up when she spoke. I told her the truth, she said. What truth? That you're soft honor. I was startled by this. Before I could respond, Olive went on speaking with cold contempt. You're in love with her, mate. I told her so. He loves you. I said he loves you. Theo and Alicia sitting in a tree. Theo and Alicia. Kissing. Olive started laughing, a horrible shrieking laugh. I could picture the rest. Alicia goat into a frenzy, spinning round, raising her paintbrush and plunging it into a leaf's eye. She's _. Olive sounded close to tears, anguished, exhausted. She's a psycho. And looking at her bandaged wound, I couldn't help but wonder if she were right. Chapter 33. The meeting took place in Diomede's office, but Stephanie Clark assumed control from the start. Now we had left the abstract world of psychology and entered the concrete realm of health and safety. We were under her jurisdiction, and she knew it. Judging by Diomede's sullen silence, it was obvious so did he. Stephanie was standing with her arms crossed. Her excitement was palpable. She was getting off on this, I thought, being in charge and having the last word. How she must have resented us all, overruling her, teaming up against her. Now she was relishing her revenge. The incident yesterday morning was totally unacceptable, she said. I warned against Alicia being allowed to paint, but I was overruled. Individual privileges always stir up jealousies and resentments. I knew something like this would happen. From now on, safety must come first. Is that why Alicia has been put in seclusion? I said, in the interest of safety. She is a threat to herself and others. She attacked Olive. She could have killed her. She was provoked. Dame shook his head and joined the conversation. He spoke wearily. I don't think any level of provocation justifies that kind of attack. Stephanie nodded. Precisely, she said. It was an isolated incident, I said. Putting Alicia in seclusion isn't just cruel. It's barbaric. I had seen patients subjected to seclusion in Broadmoor, locked in a tiny windowless room, barely enough space for a bed, let alone other furniture. Hours or days in seclusion was enough to drive anyone mad, let alone someone who was already unstable. Stephanie shrugged. As manager of the clinic, I have the authority to take any action I deem necessary. I asked Christian for his guidance, and he agreed with me. I bet he did. Across the room, Christian smiled smugly at me. I could also feel Diomedes watching me. I knew what they were thinking. I was letting it get personal and letting my feelings show. But I didn't care. Locking her up is not the answer. We need to keep talking to her. We need to understand. I understand perfectly, Christian said with a heavy, patronizing tone as if he were talking to a backward child. It's you, Theo. Me? Who else? You're the one who's been stirring things up. In what sense? Stirring? It's true, isn't it? You campaigned to lower her medication. I laughed. It was hardly a campaign. It was an intervention. She was drugged up to the eyeballs. A zombie. Sir, I turned to Diomedes. You're not seriously trying to pin this on me. Is that what's happening here? Diomedes shook his head but evaded my eye. Of course not. Nonetheless, it's obvious that her therapy has destabilized her. It's challenged her too much too soon. I suspect that's why this unfortunate event took place. I don't accept that. You're possibly too close to see it clearly. He threw up his hands and sighed. A man defeated. We can't afford any more mistakes. Not at such a critical juncture. As you know, the future of the unit is at stake. Every mistake we make gives the trust another excuse to close us down. I felt intensely irritated at his defeatism, his weary acceptance. The answer is not to drug her up and throw away the key, I said. We're not jailers. I agree, said Indira. She gave me a supportive smile and went on. The problem is we've become so risk-averse. We'd rather over-medicate than take any chances. We need to be brave enough to sit with the madness, to hold it instead of trying to lock it up. Christian rolled his eyes and was about to object, but Diomedes spoke first, shaking his head. It's too late for that. This is my fault. Alicia isn't a suitable candidate for psychotherapy. I should never have allowed it. Diomedes said he blamed himself, but I knew he was really blaming me. All eyes were on me. Diomedes' disappointed frown. Christian's gaze mocking triumphant. Stephanie's hostile stare. Indira's look of concern. I tried not to sound like I was pleading. Stop Alicia painting if you must, I said, but don't stop her therapy. It's the only way to reach her. Diomedes shook his head. I'm beginning to suspect she's unreachable. Just give me some more time. But there was a note of finality in his voice that told me there was no point in arguing further. No, Damda said. It's over. Chapter 34. Damda was wrong about the snow clouds. It didn't snow. Instead, it started raining heavily that afternoon. A storm with angry drum beats of thunder and lightning flashes. I waited for Alicia in the therapy room. Watching the rain batter the window, I felt weary and depressed. The whole thing had been a waste of time. I had lost Alicia before I could help her. Now I never would. A knock at the door. Yuri escorted Alicia into the therapy room. She looked worse than I expected. She was pale, ashen, ghost-like. The way she moved was clumsy, and her right leg trembled nonstop. Christian, I thought. She was drugged out of her mind. There was a long pause after Yuri left. Alicia didn't look at me. Eventually, I spoke loudly and clearly to make sure she understood. Alicia, I'm sorry you were put in seclusion. I'm sorry you had to go through that. No reaction. I hesitated. I'm afraid that because of what you did to a relief, our therapy has been terminated. This wasn't my decision. Far from it. But there's nothing I can do about it. I'd like to offer you this opportunity to talk about what happened, to explain your attack on Olive, and express the remorse. I'm sure you're feeling. Alicia said nothing. I wasn't sure my words were penetrating her medicated haze. I'll tell you how I feel, I went on. I feel angry, to be honest. I feel angry that our work is ending before we've even properly begun. And I feel angry that you didn't try harder. Alicia's head moved. Her eyes stared into mine. You're afraid. I know that. I said, I've been trying to help you, but you won't let me, and now I don't know what to do. I fell silent, defeated. And then Alicia did something I will never forget. She held out her trembling hand towards me. She was clutching something. A small leather-bound notebook. What's that? No reply. She kept holding it out. I peered at it, curious. Do you want me to take it? No response. I hesitated and gently took the notebook from her fluttering fingers. I opened it and thumbed through the pages. It was a handwritten diary. A journal. Alicia's journal. Judging by the handwriting, it was written in a chaotic state of mind, particularly the last pages, where the writing was barely legible. Arrows connecting different paragraphs written at different angles across the page, doodles and drawings taking over some pages, flowers growing into vines, covering what had been written and making it almost indecipherable. I looked at Alicia, burning with curiosity. What do you want me to do with this? The question was quite unnecessary. It was obvious what Alicia wanted. She wanted me to read it. Part 3. I mustn't put strangeness where there's nothing. I think that is the danger of keeping a diary. You exaggerate everything. You are on the lookout and you continually stretch the truth. Jean-Paul Sartre. Though I am not naturally honest, I am sometimes so by chance. William Shakespeare, The Winter's Tale. Alicia Binkton's diary, 8th of August. Something odd happened today. I was in the kitchen making coffee, looking out of the window, looking without seeing, daydreaming, and then I noticed something, or rather someone outside. A man. I noticed him because he was standing so still like a statue and facing the house. He was on the other side of the road by the entrance to the heath. He was standing in the shadow of a tree. He was tall, well-built. I couldn't make out his features as he was wearing sunglasses and a cap. I couldn't tell if he could see me or not through the window, but it felt like he was staring right at me. I thought it was weird. I'm used to people waiting across the street at the bus stop, but he wasn't waiting for a bus. He was staring at the house. I realized that I had been standing there for several minutes, so I made myself leave the window. I went to the studio. I tried to paint but couldn't concentrate. My mind kept going back to the man. I decided to give myself another 20 minutes and then I'd go back to the kitchen and look, and if he was still there, then what? He wasn't doing anything wrong. He might be a burglar studying the house. I suppose that was my first thought. But why just stand there like that so conspicuously? Maybe he was thinking of moving here. Maybe he's buying the house for sale at the end of the street. That could explain it. But when I went back to the kitchen and peered out of the window, he had gone. The street was empty. I guess I'll never know what he was doing. How strange. 10th of August. I went to the play with Jean Felix last night. Gabriel didn't want me to, but I went anyway. I was dreading it, but I thought if I gave Jean Felix what he wanted and went with him, maybe that would be an end to this. I hope so. Anyway, we arranged to meet early to have a drink, his idea. And when I got there, it was still light. The sun was low in the sky, coloring the river blood red. Jean Felix was waiting for me outside the National. I saw him before he saw me. He was scanning the crowds, scowling. If I had any doubt I was doing the right thing, seeing his angry face dispelled it. I was filled with a horrible kind of dread and nearly turned and bolted. But he turned and saw me before I could. He waved and I went over to him. I pretended to smile and so did he. "I'm so glad you came," Jean Felix said. "I was worried you wouldn't show up. Should we go in and have a drink?" We had a drink in the foyer. It was awkward to say the least. Neither of us mentioned the other day. We talked a lot about nothing. Or rather, Jean Felix talked and I listened. We ended up having a couple of drinks. I hadn't eaten and I felt a bit drunk. I think that was probably Jean Felix's intention. He was trying his best to engage me, but the conversation was stilted. It was orchestrated, stage-managed. Everything that came out of his mouth seemed to start with, "Wasn't it fun when, or do you remember that time we?" Like he'd rehearsed little reminiscences in the hope they'd weaken my resolve and remind me how much history we had, how close we were. What he doesn't seem to realize is I've made my decision, and nothing he can say now would change that. In the end, I'm glad I went. Not because I saw Jean Felix, because I saw the play. Alcestis isn't a tragedy I've heard of. I suppose it's obscure because it's a smaller kind of domestic story, which is why I liked it so much. It was staged in the present day in a small suburban house in Athens. I liked the scale of it. An intimate kitchen sink tragedy. A man is condemned to die and his wife, Alcestis, wants to save him. The actress playing Alcestis looked like a Greek statue. She had a wonderful face. I kept thinking about painting her. I thought about getting her details and contacting her agent. I nearly mentioned it to Jean Felix, but I stopped myself. I don't want to involve him in my life anymore on any level. I had tears in my eyes at the end. Alcestis dies and is reborn. She literally comes back from the dead. There's something there that I need to think about. I'm not sure exactly what yet. Of course, Jean Felix had all kinds of reactions to the play, but none of them really resonated with me, so I tuned him out and stopped listening. I couldn't get Alcestis' death and resurrection out of my mind. I kept thinking about it as we walked back across the bridge to the station. Jean Felix asked if I wanted to have another drink, but I said I was tired. There was another awkward pause. We stood outside the entrance to the station. I thanked him for the evening and said it had been fun. Just have one more drink, Jean. Felix said. One more for old time's sake. No, I should go. I tried to leave and he grabbed my hand. Alicia, he said, listen to me. I need to tell you something. No, please don't. There's nothing to say. Really, just listen. It's not what you think. And he's right. It wasn't. I was expecting Jean Felix to plead for our friendship or try and make me feel guilty for leaving the gallery. But what he said took me totally by surprise. You need to be careful, he said. You're way too trusting. The people around you, you trust them. Don't trust them. I stared at him blankly. It took me a second to speak. What are you talking about? Who do you mean? Jean Felix just shook his head and didn't say anything. He let go of my hand and walked off. I called after him, but he didn't stop. Jean Felix, stop. He didn't look back. I watched him disappear around the corner. I stood there rooted to the spot. I didn't know what to think. What was he doing? Making a mysterious warning and then walking off like that. I guess he wanted to get the upper hand and leave me feeling unsure and wrong-footed, and he succeeded. He also left me feeling angry. Now, in a way, he's made it easy for me. Now, I'm determined to cut him out of my life. What does he mean about people around me? Presumably, that means Gabriel. But why? No, I'm not doing this. This is exactly what Jean Felix wanted to. With my head. Get me obsessing about him. Come between me and Gabriel. I won't fall for it. I won't give it another thought. I went back home and Gabriel was in bed asleep. He had a 5 a.m. call for a shoot, but I woke him up and we had sex. I couldn't get close enough to him or feel him deeply enough in me. I wanted to be fused with him. I wanted to climb inside him and disappear. 11th of August, I saw that man again. He was a bit further away this time. He was sitting on a bench further into the heath, but it was him. I could tell. Most people are wearing shorts and t-shirts and light colors in this weather, and he was wearing a dark shirt and trousers, black sunglasses and cap, and his head was angled towards the house. Looking at it, I had a funny thought. Maybe he's not a burglar. Perhaps he's a painter. Perhaps he's a painter like me and he's thinking about painting the street or the house. But as soon as I thought this, I knew it wasn't true. If he really were going to paint the house, he wouldn't just be sitting there. He'd be making sketches. I got myself into a state about it and I phoned Gabriel. That was a mistake. I could tell he was busy. The last thing he needed was me calling. Freaking out because I think someone's watching the house. Of course, I'm only assuming the man is watching the house. He could be watching me. 13th of August. He was there again. It was soon after Gabriel left this morning. I had a shower and saw him out of the bathroom window. He was closer this time. He was standing by the bus stop like he was casually waiting for the bus. I don't know who he thinks he's fooling. I got dressed quickly and went into the kitchen to have a better look. But he was gone. I decided to tell Gabriel about it when he got home. I thought he'd brush it off, but he took it seriously. He seemed quite worried. Is it Jean Felix? He said straight away. No, of course not. How can you even think that? I tried to sound surprised and indignant, but in truth I had wondered that too. The man and Jean Felix are the same build. Could be Jean Felix, but even so, I just don't want to believe it. He wouldn't try and frighten me like that, would he? What's Jean Felix's number? Gabriel said. I'm calling him right now. Darling, don't. Please. I'm sure it's not him. Positive. Absolutely. Nothing happened. I don't know why I'm making such a big deal out of it. It's nothing. How long was he there for? Not long. An hour or so. And then he vanished. What do you mean vanished? He just disappeared. Ah. Is there any chance you could be imagining this? Something about the way he said that annoyed me. I'm not imagining it. I need you to believe me. I do believe you. But I could tell he didn't totally believe me. He only partly believed me. Part of him was just humoring me, which makes me angry, if I'm honest. So angry I have to stop here or I might write something I'll regret. 14th of August. I jumped out of bed as soon as I woke up. I checked the window hoping the man would be there again so Gabriel could see him too, but there was no sign of him. So I felt even more stupid. This afternoon I decided to go for a walk despite the heat. I wanted to be on the heath away from the buildings and roads and other people and be alone with my thoughts. I walked up to Parliament Hill, passing the bodies of sunbathers strewn around on either side of the path. I found a bench that was unoccupied and I sat down. I stared out at London glinting in the distance. While I was there, I was conscious the whole time of something. I kept looking over my shoulder, but couldn't see anyone. But someone was there the whole time. I could feel it. I was being watched. On my way back, I walked past the pond. I happened to look up and there he was, the man. He was standing across the water on the other side, too far away to see clearly. But it was him. I knew it was him. He was standing perfectly still, motionless, staring right at me. And I felt an icy shiver of fear and I acted out of instinct. "John Felix," I shouted. "Is that you? Stop it. Stop following me." He didn't move. I acted as fast as I could. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and took a photo of him. What good it would do, I have no idea. Then I turned and started walking quickly to the end of the pond, not letting myself look back until I reached the main path. I was scared he was going to be right behind me. I turned round and he was gone. I hope it's not John Felix. I really do. When I got home, I was feeling on edge. I drew the blinds and turned off the lights. I peered out of the window and there he was. The man was standing on the street staring up at me. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I nearly jumped out of my skin when someone called my name. "Alicia. Alicia, are you there?" It was that awful woman from next door, Barbie Hellman. I left the window and went to the back door and opened it. Barbie had let herself in the side gate and was in the garden clutching a bottle of wine. "Hi, honey," she said. "I saw you weren't in your studio. I wondered where you were." "I was out. I just got back. Time for a drink." She said this in a baby voice she sometimes uses and that I find really irritating. Actually, I should get back to work. Just a quick one and then I have to go. I've got my Italian class tonight. Okay. Without waiting for a reply, she came in. She said something about how dark it was in the kitchen and started opening the blinds without asking me. I was about to stop her, but when I looked outside, there was no one on the street. The man had gone. I don't know why I told Barbie about it. I don't like her or trust her, but I was scared, I suppose, and I needed someone to talk to, and she happened to be there. We had a drink which was unlike me, and I burst into tears, and Barbie stared at me wide-eyed silent for once. After I finished, she put down her bottle of wine and said, "This calls for something stronger." She poured us a couple of Weisies. "Here," she said, and gave it to me. "You need this." She was right. I needed it. I knocked it back and felt a kick from it. Now it was my turn to listen while Barbie talked. She didn't want to scare me, she said. But it didn't sound good. "I've seen this on like a million TV shows. He's studying your house, okay, before he makes his move. You think he's a burglar?" Barbie shrugged. "Or a rapist. Does that matter? It's bad news, whatever it is." I laughed. I felt relieved and grateful that someone was taking me seriously, even if it was just Barbie. I showed her the photo on my phone, but she wasn't impressed. "Text it to me so I can look at it with my glasses on. It looks like a blurry smudge to me. Tell me, have you mentioned this to your husband yet?" I decided to lie. "No," I said, "not yet." Barbie gave me a funny look. "Why not?" "I don't know. Oh, I suppose I worry Gabriel might think I'm exaggerating or imagining it." "Are you imagining it?" "No. Barbie, look, please. If Gabriel doesn't take you seriously, we'll go to the police together. You and me. I can be very persuasive. Believe me. Thanks. But I'm sure that won't be necessary. It's already necessary. Take this seriously, honey. Promise me you'll tell Gabriel when he gets home. I nodded, but I had already decided not to say anything further to Gabriel. There was nothing to tell. I have no proof the man was following me or watching me. Barbie was right. The photo proves nothing. It was all in my imagination. That's what Gabriel will say. Best not to say anything to him at all and risk upsetting him again. I don't want to bother him. I'm gonna forget all about it. 4 a.m. It's been a bad night. Gabriel came home exhausted at about 10 o'clock. He'd had a long day and wanted to go to bed early. I tried to sleep too, but I couldn't. And then a couple of hours ago, I heard a noise. It was coming from the garden. I got up and went to the back window. I looked out. I couldn't see anyone, but I felt someone's eyes on me. Someone was watching me from the shadows. I managed to pull myself away from the window and ran to the bedroom. I shook Gabriel awake. The man is outside, I said. He's outside the house. Gabriel didn't know what I was talking about. When he understood, he started to get angry. For Christ's sake, he said. Give it a rest. I've got to be at work in 3 hours. I don't want to play this __ game. It's not a game. Come and look, please. So we went to the window and of course the man wasn't there. There was no one there. I wanted Gabriel to go outside to check. But he wouldn't. He went back upstairs annoyed. I tried reasoning with him, but he said he wasn't talking to me and went to sleep in the spare room. I didn't go back to bed. I've been sitting here since then, waiting, listening, alert to any sound, checking the windows. No sign of him so far. Only a couple more hours to go. It will be light soon. 15th of August. Gabriel came downstairs ready to go to the shoot. When he saw me by the window and realized I'd been up all night, he went quiet and started acting strange. Alicia, sit down. He said, we need to talk. Yes, we do need to talk about the fact that you don't believe me. I believe that you believe it. That's not the same thing. I'm not a __ idiot. I never said you were an idiot. Then what are you saying? I thought we were about to get into a fight, so I was taken aback by what Gabriel said. He spoke in a whisper. I could barely hear him. He said, I want you to talk to someone, please. What do you mean? A policeman? No, Gabriel said, looking angry again. Not a policeman. I understood what he meant, what he was saying, but I needed to hear him say it. I wanted him to spell it out. Then who? A doctor. I'm not seeing a doctor, Gabriel. I need you to do this for me. You need to meet me halfway. He said it again. I need you to meet me halfway. I don't understand what you mean. Halfway where? I'm right here. No, you're not. You're not here. He looked so tired, so upset. I wanted to protect him. I wanted to comfort him. It's okay, darling, I said. It's going to be okay. You'll see. Gabriel shook his head like he didn't believe me. I'm going to make an appointment with Drive West as soon as he can see you today if possible. He hesitated and looked at me. Okay. Gabriel held out his hand for mine. I wanted to slap it away or scratch it. I wanted to bite him or hit him or throw him over the table and scream. You think I'm __ crazy. But I'm not crazy. I'm not. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I nodded and took Gabriel's hand and held it. Okay, darling, I said. Whatever you want. 16th of August. I went to see Drive West today unwillingly, but I went. I hate him. I've decided. I hate him and his narrow house and sitting in that weird small room upstairs hearing his dog barking in the living room. It never stopped barking. The whole time I was there, I wanted to shout at it to shut up, and I kept thinking Drive West would say something about it, but he acted like he couldn't hear it. Maybe he couldn't. He didn't seem to hear anything I was saying either. I told him what happened. I told him about the man watching the house and how I had seen him following me on the heath. I said all of this, but he didn't respond. He just sat there with that thin smile of his. He looked at me like I was an insect or something. I know he's supposedly a friend of Gabriel's, but I don't see how they ever could have been friends. Gabriel is so warm, and drive west is the opposite of warm. It's a strange thing to say about a doctor, but he has no kindness. After I finished telling him about the man, he didn't speak for ages. Silence seemed to last forever. The only sound was that dog downstairs. I started to mentally tune into the barking and go into a kind of trance. Took me by surprise when Drive West actually spoke. "We've been here before, Alicia," he said. "Haven't we?" I looked at him blankly. I wasn't sure what he meant. "Have we?" He nodded. "Yes, we have. I know you think I'm imagining this." I said, "I'm not imagining it. It's real. That's what you said last time. Remember last time? Do you remember what happened?" I didn't reply. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. I just sat there glaring at him like a disobedient child. Drive West didn't wait for an answer. He kept talking, reminding me what happened after my father died, about the breakdown I suffered, the paranoid accusations that I made, the belief I was being watched, being followed and spied upon. "So, you see, we've been here before, haven't we? But that was different. It was just a feeling. I never actually saw someone. This time I saw someone." "And who did you see?" "I already told you. A man. Describe him to me." I hesitated. "I can't." "Why not?" "I couldn't see him clearly. I told you he was too far away." "I see. And he was in disguise." "He was wearing a cap and sunglasses." "Lot of people are wearing sunglasses in this weather and hats." "Are they all in disguise?" I was starting to lose my temper. "I know what you're trying to do." "And what is that?" "You're trying to get me to admit I'm going crazy again. Like after Dad died." "Is that what you think is happening?" "No. That time I was sick. This time I'm not sick. Nothing's the matter with me. Apart from the fact someone is spying on me, and you won't believe me." Drive West nodded, but didn't say anything. He wrote a couple of things down in his notebook. "I'm going to put you back on medication," he said, "as a precaution. We don't want to let this get out of hand, do we?" I shook my head. "I'm not taking any pills." "I see. Well, if you refuse the medication, it's important to be aware of the consequences." "What consequences are you threatening me?" "It's nothing to do with me. I'm talking about your husband. How do you think Gabriel feels about what he went through last time you were unwell?" I pictured Gabriel downstairs waiting in the living room with the barking dog. "I don't know," I said. "Why don't you ask him? Do you want him to have to go through it all again? Do you perhaps think there's a limit to how much he can take?" "What are you saying?" "I'll lose Gabriel." "That's what you think?" Even saying it made me feel sick. The thought of losing him, I couldn't bear it. I'd do anything to keep him. Even pretend I'm crazy when I know I'm not. So I gave in. I agreed to be honest with Drive West about what I was thinking and feeling and tell him if I heard any voices. I promised to take the pills he gave me and to come back in 2 weeks for a checkup. Drive West looked pleased. He said we could go downstairs now and rejoin Gabriel. As he went downstairs in front of me, I thought about reaching forward and shoving him down the stairs. I wish I had. Gabriel seemed much happier on the way home. He kept glancing at me as he was driving and smiling. "Well done. I'm proud of you. We're going to get through this. You'll see." I nodded but didn't say anything because of course it's we aren't going to get through this. I'm going to have to deal with it alone. It was a mistake telling anyone. Tomorrow I'm going to tell Barbie to forget all about it. I'll say I've put it behind me and I don't want to talk about it again. She'll think I'm odd and she'll be annoyed because I'll be denying her the drama. But if I act normally, she'll soon forget all about it. As for Gabriel, I'm going to put his mind at rest. I'm going to act like everything is back to normal. I'll give a brilliant performance. I won't let my guard slip for a second. We went to the pharmacy on the way back and Gabriel got my prescription. Once we were home again, we went into the kitchen. He gave me the yellow pills with a glass of water. "Take them." "I'm not a child," I said. "You don't need to hand them to me. I know you're not a child. I just want to make sure you'll take them and not throw them away." "I'll take them." "Go on then." Gabriel watched me put the pills in my mouth and sip some water. "Good girl," he said, and kissed my cheek. He left the room. The moment Gabriel's back was turned, I spat out the pills. I spat them into the sink and washed them down the drain. I'm not taking any medication. The drugs Drive West gave me last time nearly drove me crazy, and I'm not going to risk that again. I need my wits about me now. I need to be prepared. 17th of August. I've started hiding this diary. There's a loose floorboard in the spare bedroom. I'm keeping it there, out of sight in the space underneath the floorboards. Why? Well, I'm being too honest here in these pages. It's not safe to leave it lying around. I keep imagining Gabriel stumbling across the notebook and fighting his curiosity, but then opening it and starting to read. If he found out I'm not taking the medication, he'd feel so betrayed, so hurt. I couldn't bear that. Thank God I have this diary to write in. It's keeping me sane. There's no one else I can talk to, no one I can trust. 21st of August. I've not been outside for 3 days. I've been pretending to Gabriel that I'm going for walks in the afternoons when he's out, but it's not true. It makes me fearful, the thought of going outside. I'll be too exposed. At least here in the house, I know I'm safe. I can sit by the window and monitor the passers-by. I'm scanning each face that passes for that man's face, but I don't know what he looks like. That's the problem. He could have removed his disguise and be moving about in front of me completely unnoticed. That's an alarming thought. 22nd of August. Still no sign of him. But I mustn't lose focus. It's just a matter of time. Sooner or later, he'll be back. I need to be ready. I need to take steps. I woke up this morning and remembered Gabriel's gun. I'm going to move it from the spare room. I'll keep it downstairs where I can get to it easily. I'll put it in the kitchen cupboard by the window. That way it will be there if I need it. I know all this sounds crazy. I hope nothing comes of it. I hope I never see the man again. But I have a horrible feeling I will. Where is he? Why hasn't he been here? Is he trying to get me to lower my... Max has asked us out to dinner. I can't think of anything worse than seeing Max. I pleaded with Gabriel to cancel, saying I needed to work, but he told me it would do me good to go. He insisted, and I could tell he meant it, so I had no choice. I gave in and said yes. I've been worrying all day about tonight because as soon as my mind started turning on it, everything seemed to fall into place. Everything made sense. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. It's so obvious. I understand now. The man who's watching, it isn't Jean Felix. Jean Felix isn't dark or devious enough to do this kind of thing. Who else would want to torment me, scare me, punish me? Max? Of course, it's Max. Has to be Max. He's trying to drive me crazy. I'm dreading it, but I must work up the courage somehow. I'm going to do it tonight. I'm going to confront him. 24th of August. It felt strange and a little frightening to go out last night after so long inside the house. The outside world felt huge, an empty space around me, the big sky above. I felt very small and held on to Gabriel's arm for support. Even though we went to our old favorite, Ostoto's, I didn't feel safe. It didn't feel comforting or familiar like it used to. The restaurant seemed different somehow, and it smelled different. It smelled of something burning. I asked Gabriel if something was on fire in the kitchen, but he said he couldn't smell anything. But I was imagining it. Everything's fine, he said. Just calm down. I am calm, I said. Don't I seem calm? Gabriel didn't respond. He just clenched his jaw the way he does when he's annoyed. We sat down and waited for Max in silence. Max brought his receptionist to dinner. Tanya, she's called. Apparently, they've started dating. Max was acting like he was smitten with her. His hands all over her, touching her, kissing her, and all the time he kept staring at me. Did he think he was going to make me jealous? He's horrible. He makes me sick. Tanya noticed something was up. She caught Max staring at me a couple of times. I should warn her about him. Really tell her what she's getting into. Maybe I will, but not right now. I've got other priorities at the moment. Max said he was going to the bathroom. I waited a moment and then I seized my chance. I said I needed the bathroom, too. I left the table and followed him. I caught up with Max around the corner and grabbed hold of his arm. I gripped it hard. Stop it, I said. Stop it. Max looked bemused. Stop what? You're spying on me, Max. You're watching me. I know you are. What? I have no idea what you were talking about. Alicia, don't lie to me. I was finding it hard to control my voice. I wanted to scream. I've seen you. Okay, I took a photo. I took a picture of you. Max laughed. What are you talking about? Let go of me, you crazy. Sir. I slapped his face hard. And then I turned and saw Tanya standing there. She looked like she was the one who'd been slapped. Tanya looked from Max to me, but didn't say anything. She walked out of the restaurant. Max glared at me, and before he followed her, he hissed, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm not watching you. Now get out of my way. And the way he said it with such anger, such contempt, I could tell Max was speaking the truth. I believed him. I didn't want to believe him, but I did. But if it's not Max, who is it? 25th of August. I just heard something. A noise outside. I checked the window and I saw someone moving in the shadows. It's the man. He's outside. I phoned Gabriel, but he didn't pick up. Should I call the police? I don't know what to do. My hand is shaking so much. I can bet I can hear him downstairs. He's trying the windows and the doors. He's trying to get in. I need to get out of here. I need to escape. Oh my God. I can hear him. He's inside. He's inside the house. Part 4. The aim of therapy is not to correct the past, but to enable the patient to confront his own history and to grieve over it. Alice Miller. Chapter 1. I closed Alicia's diary and placed it on my desk. I sat there, not moving, listening to the rain pelting outside the window. I tried to make sense of what I had just read. There was obviously a great deal more to Alicia Berenson than I had supposed. She had been like a closed book to me. Now that book was open, and its contents had taken me altogether by surprise. I had a lot of questions. Alicia suspected she was being watched. Did she ever discover the man's identity? Did she tell anyone? I needed to find out. As far as I knew, she only confided it in 3 people: Gabriel, Barbie, and this mysterious drive west. Did she stop there? Or did she tell anyone else? Another question. Why did the diary end so abruptly? Was there more written elsewhere? Another notebook which she didn't give to me? And I wondered about Alicia's purpose in giving me the journal to read. She was communicating something certainly, and it was a communication of almost shocking intimacy. Was it a gesture of good faith, showing how much she trusted me? Or something more sinister? There was something else, something I needed to check. Drive West, the doctor who had treated Alicia, an important character witness with vital information on her state of mind at the time of the murder. Yet Drive West hadn't testified at Alicia's trial. Why not? No mention was made of him at all. Until I saw his name in her diary, it was as if he didn't exist. How much did he know? Why had he not come forward? Drive West couldn't be the same man, and it had to be a coincidence. Surely I needed to find out. I put the diary in my desk drawer, locking it, and then almost immediately I changed my mind. I unlocked the drawer and took out the diary. Better keep it on me. Safer not to let it out of my sight. I slipped it into my coat pocket and slung it over my arm. I left my office. I went downstairs and walked along the corridor until I reached a door at the end. I stood there for a moment looking at it. A name was inscribed on a small sign on the door. It read Dr. C. West. I didn't bother to knock. I opened the door and went inside. Chapter 2. Christian was sitting behind his desk eating takeaway sushi with chopsticks. He looked up and frowned. Don't you know how to knock? I need a word. Not now. I'm in the middle of lunch. This won't take long. Just a quick question. Did you ever treat Alicia Berenson? Christian swallowed a mouthful of rice and gave me a blank look. What you mean? You know I do. I'm in charge of her care team. I don't mean here. I mean before she was admitted to the Grove. I watched Christian closely. His expression told me all I needed to know. His face went red and he lowered the chopsticks. What are you talking about? I took out Alicia's diary from my pocket and held it up. You might be interested in this. It's Alicia's journal. It was written in the months leading up to the murder. I've read it. What's that got to do with me? She mentions you in it. Me? Apparently, you were seeing her privately before she was admitted to the Grove. I wasn't aware of that. I don't understand. There must be some mistake. I don't think so. You saw her as a private patient over several years, and yet you didn't come forward to testify at the trial, despite the importance of your evidence. Nor did you admit you already knew Alicia when you started working here. Presumably, she recognized you straight away. It's lucky for you she's silent. I said this dryly, but I was intensely angry. Now I understood why Christian was so against me trying to get Alicia to talk. It was in his every interest to keep her quiet. You're a selfish son of a Christian. You know that. Christian stared at me with an increasing look of dismay. He said under his breath. Theo. Listen. It's not what it looks like. Isn't it? What else does it say in the diary? What else is there to say? Christian didn't answer the question. He held out his hand. Can I have a look at it? Sorry, I said, shaking my head. I don't think that's appropriate. Christian played with his chopsticks as he spoke. I shouldn't have done it, but it was entirely innocent. You've got to believe me. I'm afraid I don't. If it were innocent, why didn't you come forward after the murder? Because I wasn't really Alicia's doctor. I mean, not officially. I only did it as a favor to Gabriel. We were friends. We were at university together. I was at their wedding. I hadn't seen him for years until he called me looking for a psychiatrist for his wife. She'd become unwell following her father's death. And you volunteered your services. No, not at all. Quite the reverse. I wanted to refer him to a colleague, but he insisted I saw her. Gabriel said Alicia was extremely resistant to the whole idea, and the fact I was a friend of his made it much more likely she'd cooperate. I was reluctant, obviously. I'm sure you were. Christian shot me a hurt look. There's no need to be sarcastic. Where did you treat her? He hesitated. My girlfriend's house. But as I told you, he said quickly, it was unofficial. I wasn't really her doctor. I rarely saw her. Every now and then, that's all. And on those rare occasions, did you charge a fee? Christian blinked and avoided my gaze. Well, Gabriel insisted on paying, so I had no choice. Cash, I presume. Theo, was it cash? Yes, and did you declare it? Christian bit his lip and didn't reply. So the answer was no. And that was why he hadn't come forward at Alicia's trial. I wondered how many other patients he was seeing unofficially and not declaring the income. Look, he said, if Diomedes finds out, I could lose my job. You know that, don't you? There was a pleading note to his voice, appealing to my sympathy. But I had no sympathy for Christian, only contempt. Never mind the professor. What about the medical council? You'll lose your license. Only if you say something. You don't need to tell anyone. It's all water under the bridge at this point. Isn't it? I mean, it's my career we're talking about. For the sake. You should have thought of that before, shouldn't you, Theo? Please. Christian must have hated having to crawl to me like this, but watching him squirm provided me with no satisfaction, only irritation. I had no intention of betraying him to Diomedes. Not yet, anyway. He'd be much more used to me if I kept him dangling. It's okay, I said. No one else needs to know. For the moment. Thank you. Seriously, I mean it. I owe you one. Yes, you do. Go on. What do you want? I want you to talk. I want you to tell me about Alicia. What do you want to know? Everything, I said. Chapter 3. Christian stared at me, playing with his chopsticks. He deliberated for a few seconds before he spoke. There's not much to tell. I don't know what you want to hear or where you want me to start. Start at the beginning. I said you saw her over a number of years. No, I mean yes, but I told you not as frequently as you make it sound. I saw her 2 or 3 times after her father died. When was the last time? About a week before the murder. And how would you describe her mental state? Oh, Christian said, leaning back in his chair, relaxing now he was on safer ground. She was highly paranoid, delusional, psychotic even. But she'd been like this before. She had a long-standing pattern of mood swings. She was always up and down. Typical borderline. Spare me the __ diagnosis. Just give me the facts. Christian gave me a wounded look, but decided not to argue the point. What do you want to know? Alicia confided in you she was being watched. Correct. Christian gave me a blank look. Watched. Someone was spying on her. I thought she told you about it. Christian looked at me strangely. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. What's so funny? I said. You don't really believe that, do you? The peeping Tom spying through the windows. You don't think it's true? Pure fantasy. I should have thought that was obvious. I nodded at the diary. She writes about it pretty convincingly. I believed her. Well, of course she sounded convincing. I'd have believed her, too, if I hadn't known better. She was having a psychotic episode. So, you keep saying she doesn't sound psychotic in the diary. Just scared. She had a history. The same thing happened at the place they lived before Hampstead. That's why they had to move. She accused an elderly man across the street of spying on her. Made a huge fuss. Turned out the old guy was blind. Couldn't even see her, let alone spy on her. She was always highly unstable, but it was her father's suicide that did it. She never recovered. Did she talk about him with you at all? Her father? He shrugged. Not really. She would always insist that she loved him and they had a very normal relationship. As normal as it could be, considering her mother killed herself. To be honest, I was lucky to get anything out of Alicia at all. She was pretty uncooperative. She was, well, you know what she's like. Not as well as you, apparently. I went on before he could interrupt. She attempted suicide after her father's death. Christian shrugged. If you like, that's not what I would call it. What would you call it? It was suicidal behavior, but I don't believe she intended to die. She was too narcissistic to ever really want to hurt herself. She took an overdose more for show than anything else. She was communicating her distress to Gabriel. She was always trying to get his attention. Poor bastard. If I hadn't had to respect her confidentiality, I'd have warned him to get the hell out. How unfortunate for him that you're such an ethical man. Christian winced. Theo, I know you're a very empathetic man. That's what makes you such a good therapist. But you're wasting your time with Alicia Berenson. Even before the murder, she had precious little capacity for introspection or mentalizing or whatever you want to call it. She was entirely consumed with herself and her art. All the empathy you have for her, all the kindness. She isn't capable of giving it back. She's a lost cause, a total Christian said this with a scornful expression, and with absolutely no detectable empathy for such a damaged woman. For a second, I wondered if perhaps Christian were borderline, not Alicia. That would make a lot more sense. I stood up. I'm going to see Alicia. I need some answers from Alicia. Christian looked startled. And how do you intend to get them? By asking her, I said, and walked out. Chapter 4. I waited until after Diomedes disappeared into his office, and Stephanie was in a meeting with the trust. Then I slipped into the goldfish bowl and found Yuri. I need to see Alicia, I said. Oh yes, said Yuri, giving me an odd look, but I thought the therapy was discontinued. It was. I need to have a private conversation with her, that's all. Right, I see. Yuri looked doubtful. Well, the therapy room is occupied. Indira is seeing patients there for the rest of the afternoon. He thought for a second. The art room is free if you don't mind meeting there. It'll have to be quick, though. He didn't elaborate, but I knew what he meant. We had to be fast, so no one noticed and reported us to Stephanie. I was grateful Yuri was on my side. He was obviously a good man. I felt guilty for having misjudged him when we first met. Thanks, I said. I appreciate this. Yuri grinned at me. I'll have her there in 10 minutes. Yuri was as good as his word. 10 minutes later, Alicia and I were in the art room, sitting opposite each other across the paint-splattered work surface. I perched on a rickety stool, feeling precarious. Alicia looked perfectly poised as she sat down as if she were posing for a portrait or about to paint one. Thank you for this, I said, taking out her diary and placing it in front of me, for allowing me to read it. It means a great deal to me that you entrusted me with something so personal. I smiled, only to be met by a blank expression. Alicia's features were hard and unyielding. I wondered if she regretted giving me the diary. Perhaps she felt a sense of shame at having exposed herself so completely. I left a pause, then went on. The diary ends abruptly on a cliffhanger. I flicked through the journal's remaining empty pages. It's a little like our therapy together. Incomplete, unfinished. Alicia didn't speak. She just stared. I don't know what I'd expected, but not this. I assumed giving me the diary signaled a change of some kind, representing an invitation, an opening, an entry point. And yet here I was back at square one, faced with an impenetrable wall. I hoped that having spoken to me indirectly through these pages that you might go one step further and speak to me in person. No response. I think you gave this to me because you wanted to communicate with me, and you did communicate. Reading this told me a great deal about you. How lonely you were, how isolated, how afraid, and that your situation was a lot more complicated than I had previously appreciated. Your relationship with Drive West, for instance. I glanced at her as I said Christian's name. I hoped for some kind of reaction, a narrowing of the eyes, a clenched jaw, something, anything. But there was nothing, not even a blink. I had no idea you knew Christian West before you were admitted to the Grove. You saw him privately for several years. You obviously recognized him when he first came to work here a few months after your arrival. It must have been confusing when he didn't acknowledge you, and probably quite upsetting, I imagine. I asked it as a question, but there was no reply. Christian seemed of little interest to her. Alicia looked away, bored, disappointed, as if I had missed some opportunity, gone down the wrong track. There was something she had been expecting from me, something I had failed to deliver. Well, I wasn't done yet. There's something else, I said. The diary raises certain questions. Questions that need answering. Certain things don't make sense, don't fit with information I have from other sources. Now that you've allowed me to read it, I feel obliged to investigate further. I hope you understand that. I gave Alicia back the diary. She took it and rested her fingers on it. We stared at each other for a moment. I'm on your side, Alicia, I said eventually. You know that, don't you? She didn't say anything. I took that as a yes. Chapter 5. Kathy was getting careless. It was inevitable, I suppose, having got away with her infidelity for so long. She started getting lazy. I returned home to find her about to go out. I'm going for a walk, she said, pulling on her trainers. I won't be long. I could use some exercise. Fancy some company? No, I need to practice my lines. I can test you on them if you like. No, Kathy said, shaking her head. It's easier on my own. I just keep reciting the speeches, the ones I can't get my head around. The ones in Act 2. I walk around the park repeating them aloud. You should see the looks I get. I had to give it to her. Kathy said all of this with perfect sincerity while maintaining constant eye contact. She was a remarkable actress. My acting was also improving. I gave her a warm, open smile. Have a nice walk, I said. I followed her after she left the flat. I kept a careful distance, but she didn't even look back once. Like I said, she was getting careless. She walked for about 5 minutes to the entrance of the park. As she neared it, a man emerged from the shadows. He had his back to me, and I couldn't see his face. He had dark hair and was well-built, taller than me. She went up to him and he pulled her close. They started kissing. Kathy devoured his kisses hungrily, surrendering herself to him. It was strange, to say the least, to see another man's arms around her. His hands groped and fondled her breasts through her clothes. I knew I should hide. I was exposed and in plain sight. If Kathy turned round, she'd be sure to see me. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed, staring at a Medusa turned to stone. Eventually, they stopped kissing and walked into the park arm in arm. I followed. It was disorientating. From behind, from a distance, the man didn't look dissimilar to me. For a few seconds, I had a confused, out-of-body experience, convinced I was watching myself walking in the park with Kathy. Kathy led the man towards a wooded area populated with trees. He followed her into it and they vanished. I felt a sick feeling of dread in my stomach. My breathing was thick, slow, heavy. Every part of my body was telling me to leave, go, run away. But I didn't. I followed them into the woods. I tried to make as little noise as possible, but twigs crunched under my feet and branches clawed at me. I couldn't see them anywhere. The trees were growing so closely together that I could only see a few feet in front of me. I stopped and listened. I heard a rustling in the trees, but it could have been the wind. Then I heard something unmistakable, a low-pitched, guttural sound I recognized at once. It was Kathy moaning. I tried to get closer, but the branches caught me and held me suspended like a fly in a web. I stood there in the dim light, breathing in the musty smell of bark and earth. I listened to Kathy moaning as he grunted like an animal. I burned with hate. This man had come from nowhere and invaded my life. He had stolen and seduced and corrupted the one thing in the world that was precious to me. It was monstrous, supernatural. Perhaps he wasn't human at all, but the instrument of some malevolent deity intent on punishing me. Was God punishing me? Why? What was I guilty of except falling in love? Was it that I loved too deeply, too needy, too much? Did this man love her? I doubted it. Not like I did. He was just using her body. There was no way he cared for her as I did. I would have died for Kathy. I would have killed for her. I thought of my father. I knew what he'd do in this situation. He'd murder the guy. Be a man. I could hear my father shouting, "Toughen up!" Was that what I should do? Kill him. Dispose of him. It was a way out of this mess. A way to break the spell, release Kathy, and set us free. Once she had grieved his loss, it would be over. He'd just be a memory easily forgotten, and we could go on as before. I could do it now here in the park. I'd drag him into the pond, plunge his head under water. I'd hold it there until his body convulsed and went limp in my arms. Or I could follow him home on the tube, stand right behind him on the platform, and with a sharp shove, push him in the path of an oncoming train, or creep up behind him on a deserted street, clutching a brick and bash out his brains. Why not? Kathy's moans grew louder suddenly, and I recognized the groans she made as she came to a climax. Then there was a silence interrupted by the muffled giggle I knew so well. I could hear the snapping of twigs as they tramped out of the wood. I waited for a few moments, then I snapped the branches around me and fought my way out of the trees, tearing and scratching my hands to shreds. When I emerged from the wood, my eyes were half blind with tears. I wiped them away with a bleeding fist. I lurched off, going nowhere. I walked round and round like a madman. Chapter 6. John Felix. There was no one at the reception desk, and no one came when I called. I hesitated for a moment, then went into the gallery. I walked along the corridor to where the Alcestis was hanging. Once again I looked at the painting. Once again I tried to read it, and again I failed. There was something about the picture that defied interpretation, or else it had some kind of meaning that I had yet to comprehend. But what? And then a sharp intake of breath as I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Behind Alicia in the darkness. If you squinted and looked hard at the painting, the darkest parts of the shadows came together like a hologram that goes from 2 dimensions to 3 when you look at it from a certain angle, and a shape burst forth from the shadows. The figure of a man hiding in the dark, watching, spying on Alicia. "What do you want?" The voice made me jump. I turned round. John Felix didn't look particularly pleased to see me. "What are you doing here?" he said. I was about to point out the figure of the man in the painting and ask John Felix about it, but something told me it might be a bad idea. Instead, I smiled. "I just had a couple more questions. Is now a good time?" "Not really. I've told you everything I know. Surely there can't be anything else. Actually, some new information has come up." "And what is that?" "Well, for one thing, I didn't know Alicia was planning on leaving your gallery." There was a second's pause before John Felix answered. His voice sounded tight, like a rubber band about to snap. "What are you talking about? Is it true? What business is it of yours? Alicia is my patient. It's my intention to get her talking again, but I see now it might be in your interest if she remains silent." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "Well, as long as no one knows of her wish to leave, you can hold on to her artwork indefinitely." "What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I'm not accusing you at all, merely stating a fact." John Felix laughed. "We'll see about that. I'll be contacting my lawyer and be making a formal complaint to the hospital." "I don't think you will." "And why is that?" "Well, you see, I haven't told you how I heard Alicia was planning to leave. Whoever told you was lying. It was Alicia." "What?" John Felix looked stunned. "You mean she spoke?" "In a way, she gave me her diary to read." "Her diary?" He blinked a few times as if he were having trouble processing the information. I didn't know Alicia kept a diary. Well, she did. She describes your last few meetings in some detail. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. There was a heavy pause. John Felix was silent. I'll be in touch, I said. I smiled and walked out. As I emerged onto the Soho street, I felt a little guilty for ruffling John Felix's feathers like that, but it had been intentional. I wanted to see what effect the provocation would have, how he'd react, what he would do. Now I had to wait and see. As I walked through Soho, I phoned Alicia's cousin, Paul Rose, to let him know I was coming. I didn't want to turn up at the house unannounced and risk a similar reception to last time. The bruise on my head still hadn't fully healed. I cradled the phone between my ear and my shoulder as I lit a cigarette. I barely had time to inhale before the phone was answered on the first ring. I hoped it would be Paul, not Lydia. I was in luck. Hello, Paul. It's Theo Faber. Oh, hello, mate. Sorry I'm whispering, he said. Mom's having a nap and I don't want to disturb her. How's your head? Much better, thanks. Good. How can I help? Well, I said, I've received some new information about Alicia. I wanted to talk to you about it. What kind of information? I told him that Alicia gave me her diary to read. Her diary? I didn't know she kept one. What does it say? It might be easier to talk in person. Are you free today at all? Paul hesitated. It might be better if you don't come to the house. Mother isn't well. She wasn't too happy about your last visit. Yes, I gathered that. There's a pub at the end of the road by the roundabout. The White Bear. Yes, I remember it. I said that sounds fine. What time? Around 5. I should be able to get away then for a bit. I heard Lydia shouting in the background. Evidently, she had woken up. I have to go, Paul said. I'll see you later. He hung up. A few hours later, I was on my way back to Cambridge, and on the train, I made another phone call to Max Berenson. I hesitated before calling. He'd already complained to Diomedes once, so he wouldn't be pleased to hear from me again. But at this point, I knew I had no choice. Tanya answered the phone. Her cold sounded better, but I could hear the tension in her voice when she realized who I was. Max is busy. He's in meetings all day. I'll call back. I'm not sure that's a good idea. I could hear Max in the background saying something and Tanya's reply. I'm not saying that. Max grabbed the phone and spoke to me directly. I've just told Tanya to tell you to... You've got a nerve calling here again. I already complained once to Professor Diomedes. Yes, I'm aware of that. Nonetheless, some new information has come to light, and it concerns you directly, so I felt I had no choice but to get in touch. What information? It's a journal Alicia kept in the weeks leading up to the murder. There was silence at the other end of the line. I hesitated and went on. Alicia writes about you in some detail, Max. She said you had romantic feelings for her. I was wondering if there was a click as he hung up. So far, so good. Max had taken the bait, and now I had to wait to see how he'd react. I realized I was a little afraid of Max Berenson, just as Tanya was afraid of him. I remembered her whispered advice to me to talk to Paul to ask him something. What? Something about the night after the accident that killed Alicia's mother. I remembered the look on Tanya's face when Max had appeared. How she fell silent and presented him with a smile. No, I thought Max Berenson was not to be underestimated. That would be a dangerous mistake. Chapter 7. As the train approached Cambridge, the landscape flattened and the temperature dropped. I did up my coat as I left the station. The wind cut into my face like a volley of icy razor blades. I made my way to the pub to meet Paul. The White Bear was a ramshackle old place. It looked as if several extensions had been added onto the original structure over the years. A couple of students were braving the wind, sitting outside with their pints in the beer garden, wrapped up in scarves, smoking. Inside, the temperature was much warmer thanks to several roaring fires which provided a welcome relief from the cold. I got a drink and looked around for Paul. Several small rooms led off from the main bar and the lighting was low. I peered at the figures in the shadows, unsuccessfully trying to spot him. A good place for an illicit rendezvous, I thought, which I suppose is what this was. I found Paul alone in a small room. He was facing away from the door, sitting by the fire. I recognized him at once on account of his sheer size. His huge back nearly blocked the fire from sight. Paul. He jumped up and turned round. He looked like a giant in the tiny room. He had to stoop slightly to avoid hitting the ceiling. "All right," he said. He looked like he was bracing himself for bad news from a doctor. He made some room for me, and I sat down in front of the fire. It was a relief to feel its warmth on my face and hands. "It's colder than London here," I said. "That wind doesn't help. Comes straight from Siberia, that's what they say." Paul continued without pausing, clearly in no mood for small talk. "What's this about a diary? I never knew Alicia kept a diary." "Well, she did, and she gave it to you." I nodded. "And what does it say?" "It specifically details the last couple of months before the murder, and there are a couple of discrepancies I wanted to ask you about." "What discrepancies? Between your account of events and hers? What are you talking about?" He put down his pint and gave me a long stare. "What do you mean?" "Well, for one thing, you told me you hadn't seen Alicia for several years before the murder." Paul hesitated. "Did I? And in the diary, Alicia says she saw you a few weeks before Gabriel was killed. She says you came to the house in Hampstead." I stared at him, sensing him deflate inside. He looked like a boy suddenly in a body that was much too big for him. Paul was afraid. It was obvious. He didn't reply for a moment. He shot me a furtive glance. "Can I have a look at the diary?" I shook my head. "I don't think that would be appropriate. Anyway, I didn't bring it with me." "Then how do I know it even exists?" "You could be lying." "I'm not lying." "But you were. You lied to me, Paul." "Why?" "It's none of your business. That's why." "I'm afraid it is my business. Alicia's well-being is my concern." "Her well-being has got nothing to do with it. I didn't hurt her." "I never said you did." "Well, then why don't you tell me what happened?" Paul shrugged. "It's a long story." He hesitated. Then he gave in. He spoke quickly, breathlessly. I sensed it was a relief to finally tell someone. "I was in a bad way. I had a problem. I was gambling and borrowing money and not able to pay it back. I needed some cash to put everyone straight. And so you asked Alicia, did she give you the money? What does the diary say?" "It doesn't." Paul hesitated, then shook his head. "No, she didn't give me anything. She said she couldn't afford to." Again, he was lying. "Why? How did you get the money then?" "I took it out of my savings. I'd appreciate it if you kept this between us. I don't want my mother to find out. I don't think there's any reason to involve Lydia in this." "Really?" Some color came back to Paul's face. He looked more hopeful. "Thanks. I appreciate that. Did Alicia ever tell you she suspected she was being watched?" Paul lowered his glass and gave me a puzzled look. I could see she hadn't. "Watched? What do you mean?" I told him the story I had read in the diary about Alicia's suspicions. She was being watched by a stranger and finally her fears that she was under attack in her own home. Paul shook his head. "She wasn't right in the head." "You think she imagined it?" "Well, stands to reason, doesn't it?" Paul shrugged. "You don't think someone was stalking her?" "I mean, I suppose it's possible." "Yes, it is possible. So, I presume she said nothing to you about it?" "Not a word, but Alicia and I never talked much. She was always pretty silent. We all were as a family. I remember Alicia saying how weird it was. She'd go to her friends' houses and see other families laugh and joke and have conversations about things. And our house was so silent. We never talked apart from my mom giving orders." "And what about Alicia's father, Vernon? What was he like?" "Vernon didn't really talk much. He wasn't right in the head. Not after Eva died. He was never the same after that. Neither was Alicia. Come to that. That reminds me, there was something I wanted to ask you. Something Tanya mentioned to me. Tanya Berenson, you spoke to her only briefly. She suggested I talk to you." "Tanya did?" Paul's cheeks colored. I don't know her well, but she's always been very kind to me. She's a good, very good person. She visited me a couple of times." A smile appeared on Paul's lips, and he looked far away for a moment. He has a crush on her, I thought. I wondered how Max felt about that. "What did Tanya say?" he asked. "She suggested I ask you about something that happened the night after the car accident. She didn't go into detail. Yes, I know what she means. I told her during the trial. I asked her not to tell anyone. She didn't tell me. It's up to you to tell me if you wish to. Of course. If you don't want to. Paul drained his pint and shrugged. It's probably nothing, but it might help you understand Alicia. He hesitated and fell silent. Go on, I said. The first thing Alicia did when she got home from the hospital, they kept her in for a night after the crash, was she climbed up onto the roof of the house. I did too. We sat up there all night pretty much. We used to go there all the time, Alicia and me. It was our secret place on the roof. Paul hesitated. He looked at me for a second, deliberating. He made a decision. Come on, he said, standing up. I'll show you. Chapter 8. The house was in darkness as we approached. Here it is, Paul said. Follow me. An iron ladder was attached to the side of the house. We made our way over to it. The mud was frozen beneath our feet, sculpted into hard ripples and ridges. Without waiting for me, Paul started climbing up. It was getting colder by the minute. I was wondering if this was such a good idea. I followed him and gripped the first rung, icy and slippery. It was overgrown with some kind of climbing plant, ivy perhaps. I made my way up, rung by rung. By the time I reached the top, my fingers were numb and the wind was slashing my face. I climbed over onto the roof. Paul was waiting for me, grinning in an excited adolescent way. The razor-thin moon hung above us. The rest was darkness. Suddenly, Paul rushed at me, a strange expression on his face. I felt a flicker of panic as his arm reached out towards me. I swerved to avoid it, but he grabbed hold of me. For a terrifying second, I thought he was going to throw me off the roof. Instead, he pulled me towards him. You're too close to the edge, he said. Stay in the middle here. It's safer. I nodded, catching my breath. This was a bad idea. I didn't feel remotely safe around Paul. I was about to suggest climbing down again when he pulled out his cigarettes and offered me one. I hesitated, then accepted. My fingers were shaking as I took out my lighter and lit the cigarettes. We stood there and smoked in silence for a moment. This is where we would sit, he said. Alicia and me every day pretty much. How old were you? I was about 7, maybe 8. Alicia couldn't have been more than 10. You were a bit young to be climbing ladders, I suppose, so seemed normal to us. When we were teenagers, we'd come up and smoke and drink beers. I tried to picture a teenage Alicia hiding from her father and her bullying aunt. Paul, her adoring younger cousin, following up the ladder, pestering her when she'd much rather be silent, alone with her thoughts. It's a good hiding place, I said. Paul nodded. Uncle Vernon couldn't make it up the ladder. He had a big build like Mom. I could barely make it up myself. That ivy is a death trap. It's not ivy, Paul said. It's jasmine. He looked at the green vines that curled over the top of the ladder. No flowers yet. Not until the spring. Smells like perfume then when there's a lot of it. Paul seemed lost in a memory for a moment. Funny that. What? Nothing. He shrugged. The things you remember. I just was thinking about the jasmine. It was in full bloom that day, the day of the accident when Eva was killed. I looked around. You and Alicia came up here together, you said. He nodded. Mom and Uncle Vernon were looking for us down there. We could hear them calling, but we didn't say a word. We stayed hiding. And that's when it happened. He stubbed out his cigarette and gave me an odd smile. That's why I brought you here. So you can see it. The scene of the crime. The crime? Paul didn't answer. Just kept grinning at me. What crime, Paul? Vernon's crime, he said. Uncle Vernon wasn't a good man, you see. No, not at all. What are you trying to say? Well, that's when he did it. Did what? That's when he killed Alicia. I stared at him, unable to believe my ears. Killed Alicia? What are you talking about? Paul pointed at the ground below. Uncle Vernon was down there with Mom. He was drunk. Mom kept trying to get him to go back inside. But he stood down there yelling for Alicia. He was so angry with her. He was so mad. Because Alicia was hiding. But she was a child. Her mother had just died. He was a mean bastard. The only person he ever cared about was Auntie Eva. I suppose that's why he said it. Said what? I was losing patience. I don't understand what you're saying to me. What exactly happened? Vernon was going on about how much he loved Eva, how he couldn't live without her. My girl, he kept on saying. My poor girl, my Eva. Why did she have to die? Why did it have to be her? Why didn't Alicia die instead? I stared at him for a second, stunned. I wasn't sure I understood. Why didn't Alicia die instead? That's what he said. Alicia heard this. Yeah. And Alicia whispered something to me. I'll never forget it. He killed me, she said. Dad just killed me. I stared at Paul, speechless. A chorus of bells started ringing in my head, clanging, chiming, reverberating. This was what I'd been looking for. I found it. The missing piece of the jigsaw at last here on a roof in Cambridge. All the way back to London. I kept thinking about the implications of what I had heard. I understood now why Alcestis had struck a chord with Alicia. Just as Admetus had physically condemned Alcestis to die, so had Vernon Rose psychically condemned his daughter to death. Admetus must have loved Alcestis on some level. But there was no love in Vernon Rose, just hate. What he did was an act of psychic infanticide. And Elysian knew it. He killed me, she said. Dad just killed me. Now at last I had something to work with, something I knew about the emotional effects of psychological wounds on children and how they manifest themselves later in adults. Imagine it. Hearing your father, the very person you depend upon for your survival, wishing you dead. How terrifying that must be for a child. How traumatizing. How your sense of self-worth would implode and the pain would be too great, too huge to feel. So you'd swallow it, repress it, bury it. Over time, you would lose contact with the origins of your trauma, dissociate the roots of its cause, and forget. But one day, all the hurt and anger would burst forth like fire from a dragon's belly, and you'd pick up a gun. You'd visit that rage not upon your father who was dead and forgotten and out of reach, but upon your husband, the man who had taken his place in your life, who loved you and shared your bed. You'd shoot him 5 times in the head without possibly even knowing why. The train raced through the night back to London. At last I knew how to reach her. Now we could begin. Chapter 9. I sat with Alicia in silence. I was getting better at these silences, better at enduring them, settling into them, and toughing it out. It had become almost comfortable sitting in that small room with her, keeping quiet. Alicia held her hands in her lap, clenching and unclenching them rhythmically like a heartbeat. She was facing me, not looking at me, but gazing out of the window through the bars. It had stopped raining, and the clouds momentarily parted to reveal a pale blue sky. Then another cloud appeared, obscuring it with gray. Then I spoke. There's something I have become aware of, something your cousin told me. I said this as gently as I could. There was no reaction, so I went on. Paul said that when you were a child, you overheard your father say something devastating after the car accident that killed your mother. You heard him say he wished you had died instead of her. I was certain there would be a knee-jerk physical reaction, an acknowledgement of some kind. I waited, but none came. I wonder how you feel about Paul telling me this. It might seem like a betrayal of confidence, but I believe he had your best interests in mind. You are, after all, in my care. No response. I hesitated. It might help you if I tell you something. No, perhaps that's being disingenuous. Perhaps it's me it would help. The truth is, I understand you better than you think. Without wishing to disclose too much, you and I experienced similar kinds of childhoods with similar kinds of fathers, and we both left home as soon as we could. But we soon discovered that geographical distance counts for little in the world of the psyche. Some things are not so easily left behind. I know how damaging your childhood was. It's important you understand how serious this is. What your father said is tantamount to psychic murder. He killed you. This time there was a reaction. She looked up sharply straight at me. Her eyes seemed to burn right through me. If looks could kill, I would have dropped dead. I met her murderous gaze without flinching. Alicia, I said, this is our last chance. I'm sitting here now without Professor Diomede's knowledge or permission. If I keep breaking the rules like this for your sake, I'm gonna get fired. That's why this will be the last time you see me. Do you understand? I said this without any expectation or emotion. drained of hope or feeling. I was sick of bashing my head against the wall. I didn't expect any kind of response. And then I thought I imagined it at first. I thought I was hearing things. I stared at her breathless. I felt my heart thudding in my chest. My mouth was dry when I spoke. Did you just say something? Another silence. I must have been mistaken. I must have imagined it. But then it happened again. Alicia's lips moved slowly, painfully. Her voice cracked a little as it emerged like a creaking gate that needed oiling. "What?" she whispered. Then she stopped. And again. "What? What?" For a moment we just stared at each other. My eyes slowly filled with tears. Tears of disbelief, excitement, and gratitude. "What do I want?" I said. "I want you to keep talking. Talk to me, Alicia." Alicia stared at me. She was thinking about something. She came to a decision. She slowly nodded. "Okay," she said. Chapter 10. She said, "What?" Professor Diomedes stared at me with a look of stunned amazement. We were outside smoking. I could tell he was excited because he had dropped his cigar on the ground without even noticing. She spoke. Alicia really spoke. She did. "Incredible. You were right. You were right and I was wrong." "Not at all. It was wrong of me to see her without your permission, Professor. I'm sorry. I just had an instinct." Diomedes waved away my apology and finished my sentence for me. "You followed your gut. I would have done the same, Theo. Well done." I was unwilling to be too celebratory. "We mustn't count our chickens yet. It's a breakthrough." "Yes, but there's no guarantee she might revert or regress at any point." Diomedes nodded. "Quite right. We must organize a formal review and interview Alicia as soon as possible. Get her in front of a panel. You and me and someone from the trust. Julian will do. He's harmless enough. You're going too fast. You're not listening to me. That's too soon. Anything like that will scare her. We need to move slowly." "Well, it's important. The trust knows." "No, not yet. Maybe this was a one-off. Let's wait. Let's not make any announcements." "Not just yet." Diomedes nodded, taking this in. His hand reached for my shoulder and gripped it. "Well done," he said again. "I am proud of you." I felt a small flicker of pride. A son congratulated by his father. I was conscious of my desire to please Diomedes, justify his faith in me, and make him proud. I felt a little emotional. I lit a cigarette to disguise it. "What now?" "Now you keep going," Damda said. "Keep working with Alicia. And if Stephanie finds out, forget Stephanie. Leave her to me. You focus on Alicia." And so I did. During our next session, Alicia and I talked nonstop. Listening to Alicia was an unfamiliar and somewhat disconcerting experience after so much silence. She spoke hesitatingly at first, tentatively, trying to walk on legs that hadn't been used in a while. She soon found her feet picking up speed and agility, tripping through sentences as if she had never been silent, which in a way she hadn't. When the session ended, I went to my office. I sat at the desk, transcribing what had been said while it was still fresh in my mind. I wrote down everything, word for word, capturing it as precisely and accurately as possible. As you will see, it's an incredible story. Of that there is no doubt. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. Chapter 11. Alicia sat in the chair opposite me in the therapy room. "Before we begin," I said, "I have some questions for you. A few things I'd like to clarify." No reply. Alicia looked at me with that unreadable look of hers. I went on. "Specifically, I want to understand your silence. I want to know why you refused to speak." Alicia seemed disappointed by the question. She turned and looked out of the window. We sat like that in silence for a minute or so. I tried to contain the suspense I was feeling. Had the breakthrough been temporary, would we now go on as before? I couldn't let that happen. "Alicia, I know it's difficult, but once you start talking to me, you'll find it easier. Promise." No response. "Try. Please don't give up when you've made such progress. Keep going. Tell me why you wouldn't speak." Alicia turned back and stared at me with a chilly gaze. She spoke in a low voice. Nothing to say. "I'm not sure I believe that." I think there was too much to say. A pause. A shrug. Perhaps, she said. Perhaps you're right. Go on, she hesitated. At first, she said, when he was dead, I tried, but I couldn't talk. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out, like in a dream where you tried to scream but can't. You were in a state of shock, but over the next few days you must have found your voice returning to you. By then, it seemed pointless. It was too late to speak in your defense. Alicia held me in her gaze, a cryptic smile on her lips. She didn't speak. Tell me why you started talking again. You know the answer. Do I? Because of you. Me? I looked at her with surprise. Because you came here, and that made a difference. All the difference. It made all the difference. Alicia lowered her voice and stared at me, unblinking. I want you to understand what happened to me, what it felt like. It's important you understand. I want to understand. That's why you gave me the diary, isn't it? Because you want me to understand. It seems to me the people who mattered most to you didn't believe your story about the man. Perhaps you're wondering if I believe you. You believe me? She said. This was not a question, but a simple statement of fact. And I nodded. Yes, I believe you. So why don't we start there? The last diary entry you wrote described the man breaking into the house. What happened then? Nothing. Nothing? She shook her head. It wasn't M. It wasn't. Then who was it? It was John Felix. He didn't want to. He was upset. He shouted at me a bit, but he went after a while. And then I asked, what happened after John Felix left? Alicia shook her head. I don't want to talk about that. No, not yet. Alicia's eyes looked into mine for a moment. Then they darted to the window, considering the darkening sky beyond the bars. There was something almost coquettish in the way she was tilting her head, and the beginning of a smile was forming at the corner of her mouth. She's enjoying this. I thought, having me in her power. What do you want to talk about? I asked. I don't know. Nothing. I just want to talk. And so we talked. We talked about Lydia and Paul and about her mother and the summer she died. We talked about Alicia's childhood and mine. I told her about my father and growing up in that house. She seemed curious to know as much as possible about my past and what had shaped me and made me who I am. I remember thinking there's no going back now. We were crashing through every last boundary between therapist and patient, and soon it would be impossible to tell who was who. Chapter 12. The next morning we met again. Alicia seemed different today, somehow more reserved, more guarded. I think it's because she was preparing herself to talk about the day of Gabriel's death. She sat opposite me and, unusually for her, looked straight at me and maintained eye contact throughout. She started speaking without being prompted, slowly, thoughtfully choosing each phrase with care, as if cautiously applying brush strokes to a canvas. I was alone that afternoon, she began. I knew I had to paint, but it was so hot. I didn't think I could face it, but I decided to try. So, I took the little fan I'd bought down to the studio in the garden. And then my phone rang. It was Gabriel. He was calling to say he'd be back late from the shoot. Did he normally do that? Called to say he'd be late. Alicia gave me an odd look, as if it struck her as a strange question. She shook her head. No. Why? I wondered if he might be calling for another reason to see how you were feeling. Judging from your diary, it sounds like he was concerned about your mental state. Alicia pondered this, taken aback. She slowly nodded. I see. Yes. Possibly. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go on. What happened after the phone call? Alicia hesitated. I saw him. The man, I saw his reflection reflected in the window. He was inside the studio standing right behind me. Alicia shut her eyes and sat quite still. There was a long pause. I spoke gently. Can you describe him? What did he look like? She opened her eyes and stared at me for a moment. He was tall, strong. I couldn't see his face. He had put on a mask, a black mask. But I could see his eyes. They were dark holes. No light in them at all. What did you do when you saw him? Nothing. I was so scared. I kept looking at him. He had a knife in his hand. I asked what he wanted. He didn't speak. And I said I had money in the kitchen in my bag, and he shook his head and said, I don't want money. And he laughed. A horrible laugh. Like breaking glass. He held the knife up to my neck. The sharp end of the blade was against my throat, against my skin. He told me to go with him into the house. Alicia shut her eyes as she remembered it. He led me out of the studio onto the lawn. We walked towards the house. I could see the gate to the street just a few meters away. I was so close to it, and something in me took over. It was my only chance to escape. So I kicked him hard and broke away from him, and I ran. I ran for the gate. Her eyes opened and she smiled at the memory. For a few seconds I was free. Her smile faded. Then he jumped on me on my back. We fell to the ground. His hand was over my mouth and I felt the cold blade against my throat. He said he'd kill me if I moved. We lay there for a few seconds and I could feel his breath on my face. It stank. Then he pulled me up and dragged me into the house. And then what happened? He locked the door, she said. And I was trapped. At this point, Alicia's breathing was heavy and her cheeks were flushed. I was concerned she was becoming distressed and I was wary of pushing her too hard. Do you need a break? I said. She shook her head. Let's keep going. I've waited long enough to say this. I want to get it over with. Are you sure it might be a good idea to take a moment? She hesitated. Can I have a cigarette? A cigarette? I didn't know you smoked. I don't. I used to. Can you give me one? How do you know I smoke? I can smell it on you. Oh, I smiled, feeling a little embarrassed. Okay, I said, standing up. Let's go outside. Chapter 13. The courtyard was populated with patients. They were huddled about in their usual groups, gossiping, arguing, smoking. Some were hugging themselves and stamping their feet to keep warm. Alicia put a cigarette to her lips, holding it between her long, thin fingers. I lit it for her. As the flame caught the tip of her cigarette, it crackled and glowed red. She inhaled deeply, her eyes on me. She seemed almost amused. Aren't you going to smoke? Or is that inappropriate? Sharing a cigarette with a patient. She's making fun of me, I thought. But she was right to. There was no regulation prohibiting a member of staff and a patient from having a cigarette together. But if staff smoked, they tended to do it covertly, sneaking to the fire escape at the back of the building. They certainly didn't do it in front of the patients. To stand here in the courtyard and smoke with her did feel like a transgression, and I was probably imagining it, but I felt we were being watched. I sensed Christian spying on us from the window. His words came back to me. Borderlines are so seductive. I looked into Alicia's eyes. They weren't seductive. They weren't even friendly. There was a fierce mind behind those eyes, a sharp intelligence that was only just waking up. She was a force to be reckoned with. Alicia Berenson, I understood that now. Perhaps that's why Christian had felt the need to sedate her. Was he scared of what she might do, what she might say? I felt a little scared of her myself. Not scared exactly, but alert, apprehensive. I knew I had to watch my step. Why not? I said. I'll have one too. I put a cigarette in my mouth and lit it. We smoked in silence for a moment, maintaining eye contact, only inches away from each other, until I felt a strange adolescent embarrassment and averted my gaze. I tried to cover it by gesturing at the courtyard. Should we walk and talk? Alicia nodded. Okay. We started walking around the wall along the perimeter of the courtyard. The other patients watched us. I wondered what they were thinking. Alicia didn't seem to care. She didn't even seem to notice them. We walked in silence for a moment. Eventually, she said, Do you want me to go on? If you want to? Yes. Are you ready? Alicia nodded. Yes, I am. What happened once you were inside the house? The man said he wanted a drink. So I gave him one of Gabriel's beers. I don't drink beer. I didn't have anything else in the house. And then he talked. What about? I don't remember. You don't? No. She lapsed into silence. I waited as long as I could bear before prompting her. Let's keep going, I said. You were in the kitchen. How were you feeling? I don't remember feeling anything at all. I nodded. That's not uncommon in these situations. It's not just a case of flight or fight responses. There's a third equally common response when we're under attack. We freeze. I didn't freeze. No, no. She shot me a fierce look. I was preparing myself. I was getting ready. Ready to fight. Ready to kill him. I see. And how did you intend to do that? Gabriel's gun. I knew I had to get the gun. It was in the kitchen. You had put it there. That's what you wrote in the diary. Alicia nodded. Yes. In the cupboard by the window. She inhaled deeply and blew out a long line of smoke. I told him I needed some water. I went to get a glass. I walked across the kitchen. It took forever to walk a few feet. Step by step, I reached the cupboard. My hand was shaking. I opened it and the cupboard was empty. The gun was gone. And then I heard him say, "The glasses are in the cupboard to your right." I turned round and the gun was there in his hand. He was pointing it at me and laughing. And then what were you thinking? That it had been my last chance to escape. And now he was going to kill me. You believed he was going to kill you. I knew he was. But then why did he delay? I asked. Why not do it as soon as he broke into the house? Alicia didn't answer. I glanced at her. To my surprise, there was a smile on her lips. When I was young, she said, Aunt Lydia had a kitten, a tabby cat. I didn't like her much. She was wild and she'd go for me sometimes with her claws. She was unkind and cruel. Don't animals act out of instinct? Can they be cruel? Alicia looked at me intently. They can be cruel. She would bring in things from the field, mice or little birds she'd caught, and they were always half alive. Wounded but alive. She'd keep them like that and play with them. I see. It sounds like you're saying you were this man's prey, that he was playing some kind of sadistic game with you. Is that right? Alicia dropped the end of her cigarette on the ground and stepped on it. Give me another one. I handed her the pack. She took one and lit the cigarette herself. She smoked for a moment. She went on. Gabriel was coming home at 8. 2 more hours. I kept staring at the clock. What's the matter? He said, Don't you like spending time with me? And he stroked my skin with the gun, running it up and down my arm. She shivered at the memory. I said Gabriel was going to be home any minute. And what then? He asked. He'll rescue you. And what did you say? I didn't say anything. I just kept staring at the clock. And then my phone rang. It was Gabriel. He told me to answer it. He held the gun against my head. And what did Gabriel say? He said the shoot was turning into a nightmare, so I should go ahead and eat without him. He wouldn't get back until 10 o'clock at the earliest. I hung up. My husband is on his way home, I said. He'll be here in a few minutes. You should go now before he gets back. The man just laughed. But I heard him say he won't be back until 10, he said. We've got hours to kill. Get me some rope, he said. Or tape or something. I want to tie you up. I did as he asked. I knew it was hopeless now. I knew how it was going to end. Alicia stopped talking and looked at me. I could see the raw emotion in her eyes. I wondered if I were pushing her too hard. Maybe we should take a break. No, I need to finish this. I need to do this. She went on, speaking faster now. I didn't have any rope, so he took the wire I had for hanging canvases. He made me go in the living room. He pulled out one of the upright chairs from the dining table. He told me to sit down. He started wrapping the wire around my ankles, tying me to the chair. I could feel it cutting into me. Please, I said. Please. But he didn't listen. He tied my wrists behind my back. I was sure then that he was going to kill me. I wish he had. She spat this out. I was startled by her vehemence. Why do you wish that? Because what he did was worse. For a second, I thought Alicia was going to cry. I fought a sudden desire to hold her. Take her in my arms. Kiss her. Reassure her. Promise her she was safe. I restrained myself. I stubbed out my cigarette on the red brick wall. I feel that you need to be taken care of, I said. I find myself wanting to take care of you, Alicia. No. She shook her head firmly. That's not what I want from you. What do you want? Alicia didn't answer. She turned and walked back inside. Chapter 14. I turned on the light in the therapy room and shut the door. When I turned around, Alicia had already sat down, but not in her chair. She was sitting in my chair. This was a telling gesture, and normally I would have explored its meaning with her. Now, however, I said nothing. If sitting in my chair signified she had the upper hand, well, she did. I was impatient to get to the end of her story. Now we were so close to it, so I just sat down and waited for her to speak. She half shut her eyes and was perfectly still. Eventually, she said, "I was tied to the chair, and every time I squirmed, the wire cut deeper into my legs, and they were bleeding. It was a relief to focus on the cutting instead of my thoughts. My thoughts were too scary. I thought I would never see Gabriel again. I thought I was going to die. What happened next? We sat there for what seemed like forever. It's funny. I've always thought of fear as a cold sensation, but it's not. It burns like fire. It was so hot in that room with the windows closed and the blinds drawn, still stifling heavy air. Beads of sweat were dripping down my forehead and into my eyes, stinging them. I could smell the alcohol on him and the stink of his sweat while he drank and talked. He kept talking. I didn't listen to a lot of it. I could hear a big fat fly buzzing between the blind and the window. It was trapped and thudding against the glass. Thud, thud, thud. He asked questions about me and Gabriel, how we met, how long we'd been together, if we were happy. I thought if I could keep him talking, I had a better chance of staying alive. So, I answered his questions about me, Gabriel, my work. I talked about whatever he wanted just to buy time. I kept focusing on the clock, listening to it tick, and then suddenly it was 10 o'clock and then 10:30 and still Gabriel hadn't come home. "He's late," he said. "Maybe he's not coming." "He's coming," I said. "Well, it's a good thing I'm here to keep you company." And then the clock struck 11 and I heard a car outside. The man went to the window and looked out. "Perfect timing," he said. "What happened next," Alicia said, "happened fast." The man grabbed Alicia and swung her chair round so she faced away from the door. He said he would shoot Gabriel in the head if she spoke one word or made a single sound. Then he disappeared. A moment later, the lights fused and everything went dark. In the hallway, the front door opened and closed. "Alicia," Gabriel called out. There was no reply and he called her name again. He walked into the living room and saw her by the fireplace, sitting with her back to him. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" Gabriel asked. No reply. "Alicia." Alicia fought to remain silent. She wanted to cry out, but her eyes had become accustomed to the dark, and she could see in front of her in the corner of the room the man's gun glinting in the shadows. He was pointing it at Gabriel. Alicia kept silent for his sake. "Alicia." Gabriel walked towards her. "What's wrong?" Just as Gabriel reached out his hand to touch her, the man leapt from the darkness. Alicia screamed, but it was too late, and Gabriel was knocked to the floor, the man on top of him. The gun was raised like a hammer and brought down onto Gabriel's head with a sickening thud. Once, twice, 3 times, and he lay there unconscious, bleeding. The man pulled him up and sat Gabriel on a chair. He tied him to it using the wire. Gabriel stirred as he regained consciousness. "What the ___?" The man raised the gun and aimed it at Gabriel. There was a gunshot and another and another. Alicia started screaming. The man kept firing. He shot Gabriel in the head 6 times. Then he tossed the gun to the floor. He left without saying a word. Chapter 15. So there you have it. Alicia Berenson didn't kill her husband. A faceless intruder broke into their home and, in an apparently motiveless act of malice, shot Gabriel dead before vanishing into the night. Alicia was entirely innocent. That's if you believe her explanation. I didn't. Not a word of it. Apart from her obvious inconsistencies and inaccuracies, such as the fact Gabriel was not shot 6 times, but only 5, one of the bullets being fired at the ceiling, nor was Alicia discovered tied to a chair, but standing in the middle of the room, having slashed her wrists. Alicia made no mention to me of the man untying her, nor did she explain why she hadn't told the police this version of events from the start. No, I knew she was lying, and I was annoyed that she had lied badly and pointlessly to my face. For a second, I wondered if she were testing me, seeing whether I accepted the story or not. If so, I was determined to give nothing away. I sat there in silence. Unusually, Alicia spoke first. "I'm tired," she said. "I want to stop." I nodded. I couldn't object. Let's carry on tomorrow, she said. Is there more to say? Yes. One last thing. Very well, I said. Tomorrow. Yuri was waiting in the corridor. He escorted Alicia to her room and I went up to my office. As I have said, it's been my practice for years to transcribe a session as soon as it's ended. The ability to accurately record what has been said during the past 50 minutes is of paramount importance to a therapist. Otherwise, much detail is forgotten and the immediacy of the emotions lost. I sat at my desk and wrote down as fast as I could everything that had transpired between us. The moment I finished, I marched through the corridors, clutching my pages of notes. I knocked on Diomede's door. There was no response, so I knocked again. Still no answer. I opened the door a crack and there was Diomedes fast asleep on his narrow couch. Professor, and again louder. Professor Diomedes. He woke with a start and sat up quickly. He blinked at me. What is it? What's wrong? I need to talk to you. Should I come back later? Diomedes frowned and shook his head. I was having a brief siesta. I always do after lunch. It helps me get through the afternoon. It becomes a necessity as you get older. He yawned and stood up. Come in, Theo. Sit down. By the looks of you, it's important. I think it is. Yes, Alicia. I nodded. I sat in front of the desk. He sat down behind it. His hair was sticking up to one side and he still looked half asleep. Are you sure I shouldn't come back later? Dame shook his head. He poured himself a glass of water from a jug. I'm awake now. Go on. What is it? I've been with Alicia talking. I need some supervision. Dameda nodded. He was looking more awake by the second and more interested. Go on. I started reading from my notes. I took him through the entire session. I repeated her words as accurately as I could and relayed the story she had told me. How the man who'd been spying on her broke into the house, took her prisoner, and shot and killed Gabriel. When I finished, there was a long pause. Dame's expression gave little away. He pulled a box of cigars out of his desk drawer. He took out a little silver guillotine. He popped the end of a cigar into it and sliced it off. Let's start with the countertransference, he said. Tell me about your emotional experience. Start at the beginning. As she was telling you her story, what kind of feelings were coming up? I thought about it for a moment. I felt excited, I suppose, and anxious. Afraid. Afraid. Was it your fear or hers? Both, I imagine. And what were you afraid of? I'm not sure. Fear of failure, perhaps. I have a lot riding on this, as you know. Diomedes nodded. What else? Frustration, too. I feel frustrated quite frequently during our sessions. And angry? Yes, I suppose. No, you feel like a frustrated father dealing with a difficult child. Yes, I want to help her, but I don't know if she wants to be helped. He nodded. Stay with the feeling of anger. Talk more about it. How does it manifest itself? I hesitated. Well, I often leave the sessions with a splitting headache. Diomedes nodded. Yes, exactly. It has to come out one way or another. A trainee who is not anxious will be sick. Who was it who said that? I don't know. I shrugged. I'm sick and anxious. Dame smiled. You're also no longer a trainee, although those feelings never go away entirely. He picked up his cigar. Let's go outside for a smoke. We went out onto the fire escape. Diomedes puffed on his cigar for a moment, mulling things over. Eventually, he reached a conclusion. She's lying, you know. He said, You mean about the man killing Gabriel? I thought so, too. Not just that. Then what? All of it? The whole and bull story. I don't believe a single word of it. I must have looked rather taken back. I had suspected he'd disbelieve some elements of Alicia's tale. I hadn't expected him to reject the whole thing. You don't believe in the man? No, I don't. I don't believe he ever existed. It's a fantasy from start to finish. What makes you so sure? Diomedes gave me a strange smile. Call it my intuition. Years of professional experience with fantasists. I tried to interrupt, but he told me with a wave of his hand. Of course, I don't expect you to agree, Theo. You're in deep with Alicia, and your feelings are bound up with hers like a tangled ball of wool. That is the purpose of a supervision like this, to help you unpick the strands of wool, to see what is yours and what is hers. And once you gain some distance and clarity, I suspect you will feel rather differently about your experience with Alicia Berenson. I'm not sure what you mean. Well, to be blunt, I fear she has been performing for you, manipulating you, and it's a performance that I believe has been tailored specifically to appeal to your chivalric and, let's say, romantic instincts. It was obvious to me from the start that you intended to rescue her. I'm quite sure it was obvious to Alicia, too, hence her seduction of you. You sound like Christian. She hasn't seduced me. I am perfectly capable of withstanding a patient's sexual projections. Don't underestimate me, Professor. Don't underestimate her. She's giving an excellent performance. Diomedes shook his head and peered up at the gray clouds. The vulnerable woman under attack, alone in need of protection. Alicia has cast herself as the victim and this mystery man as the villain. Whereas in fact Alicia and the man are one and the same. She killed Gabriel. She was guilty and she is still refusing to accept that guilt. So she splits, dissociates, fantasizes. Alicia becomes the innocent victim and you are her protector. And by colluding with this fantasy, you are allowing her to disown all responsibility. I don't agree with that. I don't believe she is lying consciously anyway. At the very least, Alicia believes her story to be true. Yes, she believes it. Alicia is under attack, but from her own psyche, not the outside world. I knew that wasn't true, but there was no point in arguing the point further. I stubbed out my cigarette. How do you think I should proceed? You must force her to confront the truth. Only then will she have a hope of recovery. You must refuse point blank to accept her story. Challenge her. Demand she tell you the truth. And do you think she will? He shrugged. That he said, taking a long drag on his cigar is anyone's guess. Very well. I'll talk to her tomorrow. I'll confront her. Diomedes looked slightly uneasy and opened his mouth as though he were about to say something further, but he changed his mind. He nodded and stamped on his cigar with an air of finality. Tomorrow, he said. Chapter 16. After work, I followed Kathy to the park again. Sure enough, her lover was waiting at the same spot they met at last time. They kissed and groped each other like teenagers. Kathy glanced in my direction and for a second I thought she saw me. But no, she only had eyes for him. I tried to get a better look at him this time, but I still didn't see his face properly, though there was something familiar about his build. I had the feeling I'd seen him before somewhere. They walked towards Camden and disappeared into a pub, the Rose and Crown, a seedy-looking place. I waited in the cafe opposite. About an hour later, they came out. Kathy was all over him, kissing him. They kissed for a while by the road. I watched, feeling sick to my stomach, burning with hate. She eventually said goodbye to him, and they left each other. She started walking away. The man turned and walked in the opposite direction. I didn't follow Kathy. I followed him. He waited at a bus stop. I stood behind him. I looked at his back, his shoulders. I imagined lunging at him, shoving him under the oncoming bus. But I didn't push him. He got on the bus. And so did I. I assumed he would go directly home, but he didn't. He changed bus a couple of times. I followed him from a distance. He went to the East End where he disappeared into a warehouse for half an hour. Then another journey involving another bus. He made a couple of phone calls, speaking in a low voice and chuckling frequently. I wondered if he were talking to Kathy. I was feeling increasingly frustrated and disheartened, but I was also stubborn and refused to give up. Eventually, he made his way home, getting off the bus and turning onto a quiet tree-lined street. He was still talking on his phone. I followed him, keeping my distance. The street was deserted. If he had turned around, he would have seen me. But he didn't. I passed a house with a rock garden and succulent plants. I acted without thinking. My body seemed to move on its own. My arm reached over the low wall into the garden and picked up a rock. I could feel its weight in my hands. My hands knew what to do. They had decided to kill him. Crack open the worthless scumbag's skull. I went along with this in a mindless trance, creeping after him, silently gaining ground, getting nearer. Soon I was close enough. I raised the rock, preparing to smash it down on him with all my strength. I'd knock him to the ground and bash his brains out. I was so close. If he weren't still talking on his phone, he'd have heard me. Now I raised the rock and right behind me on my left a front door opened. A sudden buzz of conversation, loud thank yous and goodbyes as people left the house. I froze. Right in front of me, Kathy's lover stopped and looked in the direction of the noise at the house. I stepped aside and hid behind a tree. He didn't see me. He started walking again, but I didn't follow. The interruption had startled me out of my reverie. The rock fell from my hand and it thudded to the ground. I watched him from behind the tree. He strolled up to the front door of a house, unlocked it, and let himself inside. A few seconds later, a light went on in the kitchen. He was standing in profile, a little way from the window. Only half of the room was visible from the street. He was talking to someone I couldn't see. While they talked, he opened a bottle of wine. They sat down and ate a meal together. Then I caught a glimpse of his companion. It was a woman. Was it his wife? I couldn't see her clearly. He put his arm around her and kissed her. So I wasn't the only one being betrayed. He had returned home after kissing my wife and ate the meal this woman had prepared for him as if nothing had happened. I knew I couldn't leave it here. I had to do something. But what? Despite my best homicidal fantasies, I wasn't a murderer. Couldn't kill him. I'd have to think of something cleverer than that. Chapter 17. I planned to have it out with Alicia first thing in the morning. I intended to make her admit she had lied to me about the man killing Gabriel and force her to confront the truth. Unfortunately, I never got the chance. Yuri was waiting for me in the reception. "Theo, I need to talk to you." "What is it?" I took a closer look at him. His face seemed to have aged overnight. He looked shrunken, pale, bloodless. Something bad had happened. "There's been an accident," he said. "Alicia, she took an overdose." "What is she?" Yuri shook his head. "She's still alive, but thank God. But she's in a coma. It doesn't look good." "Where is she?" Yuri took me through a series of locked corridors into the intensive care ward. Alicia was in a private room. She was hooked up to an ECG machine and a ventilator. Her eyes were closed. Christian was there with another doctor. He looked ashen in contrast to the emergency room doctor who had a deep suntan. She'd obviously just got back from holiday. But she didn't look refreshed. She looked exhausted. "How is Alicia?" I said. The doctor shook her head. "Not good. We had to induce a coma. Her respiratory system failed." "What did she take?" "An opioid of some kind. Hydrocodone, probably." Yuri nodded. There was an empty bottle of pills on the desk in her room. "Who found her?" "I did," Yuri said. "She was on the floor by the bed. She didn't seem to be breathing. I thought she was dead at first." "Any idea how she got hold of the pills?" Yuri glanced at Christian, who shrugged. "We all know there's a lot of dealing going on in the wards." "Alif is dealing," I said. Christian nodded. "Yes, I think so, too." Indira came in. She looked close to tears. She stood by Alicia's side and watched her for a moment. "This is going to have a terrible effect on the others," she said. "It always sets the patients back months when this sort of thing happens." She sat down and reached for Alicia's hand and stroked it. I watched the ventilator rise and fall. There was silence for a moment. "I blame myself," I said. Indira shook her head. "It's not your fault, Theo. I should have taken better care of her. You did your best. You helped her, which is more than anyone else did." "Has anybody told Diomedes?" Christian shook his head. "We've not been able to get a hold of him yet. Did you try his mobile and his home phone?" "And I've tried a few times." Yuri frowned. "But I saw Professor Damda earlier. He was here." "He was?" "Yes, I saw him early this morning. He was at the other end of the corridor and he seemed in a rush. At least I think it was him." "That's odd." "Well, he must have gone home." "Try him again, will you?" Yuri nodded. He looked far away somehow. Dazed. Lost. He seemed to have taken it very badly. I felt sorry for him. Christian's pager went off, startling him. He quickly left the room, followed by Yuri and the doctor. Indira hesitated and spoke in a low voice. "Would you like a moment alone with Alicia?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Indira stood up and squeezed my shoulder for a second. Then she walked out. Alicia and I were alone. I sat down by the bed. I reached out and took Alicia's arm. There was a cannula attached to the back of her hand. I gently held her hand, stroking her palm and the inside of her wrist. I stroked her wrist with my finger, feeling the veins under her skin and the raised, thickened scars from her suicide attempts. So this was it. This was how it was going to end. Melissa was silent again, and this time her silence would last forever. I wondered what Diomedes would say. I could imagine what Christian would tell him. He'd find a way to blame me somehow. The emotions I stirred up in therapy were too much for Alicia to contain. She got hold of the hydrocodone as an attempt to self-soothe and self-medicate. The overdose might have been accidental, I could hear Diomedes saying, but the behavior was suicidal and that would be that. But that was not that. Something had been overlooked. Something significant. Something no one had noticed. Not even Yuri when he found Alicia unconscious by the bed. There was an empty pill bottle on her desk. Yes. And a couple of pills on the floor, so of course it was assumed she had taken an overdose. But here, under my fingertip, on the inside of Alicia's wrist, was some bruising and a little mark that told a very different story. A pin prick along the vein. A tiny hole left by a hypodermic needle, revealing the truth. Alicia didn't swallow a bottle of pills in a suicidal gesture. She was injected with a massive dose of morphine. This wasn't an overdose. It was attempted murder. Chapter 18. Diomedes turned up half an hour later. He had been in a meeting with the trust, he said, and then got stuck on the underground, delayed by a signal failure. He asked Yuri to send for me. Yuri found me in my office. Professor Damda is here. He's with Stephanie, they're waiting for you. Thanks. I'll be right there. I made my way to Dame's office, expecting the worst. A scapegoat would be needed to take the blame. I'd seen it before at Broadmoor in cases of suicide. Whichever member of staff was closest to the victim was held accountable, be it therapist, doctor, or nurse. No doubt Stephanie was begging for my blood. I knocked on the door and went inside. Stephanie and Diomedes were standing on either side of the desk. Judging by the tense silence, I'd interrupted a disagreement. Diomedes was the first to speak. He was clearly agitated, and his hands flew all over the place. Terrible business. Terrible. Obviously, it couldn't have come at a worse time. It gives the trust the perfect excuse to shut us down. I hardly think the trust is the immediate concern, Stephanie said. The safety of the patients comes first. We need to find out exactly what happened. She turned to me. Indira mentioned you suspected a leaf of dealing drugs. That's how Alicia got hold of the hydrocodone. I hesitated. Well, I have no proof. It's something I've heard a couple of the nurses talking about. But actually, there's something else I think you should know. Stephanie interrupted me with a shake of her head. We know what happened. It wasn't a leaf. No. Christian happened to be passing the nurse's station, and he saw the drugs cabinet was left wide open. There was no one in the station. Yuri had left it unlocked. Anyone could have gone in and helped themselves. And Christian saw Alicia lurking around the corner. He wondered what she was doing there at the time. Now, of course, it makes sense. How fortunate Christian was there to see all this. There was a sarcastic tone to my voice, which Stephanie chose not to pick up on. Christian isn't the only person who's noticed Yuri's carelessness. She went on. I've often felt Yuri is far too relaxed about security, too friendly with the patients, too concerned with being popular. I'm surprised something like this didn't happen sooner. I see, I said. I did see. I understood now why Stephanie was being cordial to me. Seemed I was off the hook. She had chosen Yuri as the scapegoat instead. Yuri always seemed so meticulous, I said, glancing at Diomedes, wondering if he'd intervene. I really don't think. Diomedes shrugged. My personal opinion is Alicia has always been highly suicidal. As we know, when someone wants to die, despite your best efforts to protect them, it's often impossible to prevent it. Isn't that our job? Stephanie snapped. To prevent it? No. Damda shook his head. Our job is to help them heal, but we are not God. We do not have the power over life and death. Alicia Berenson wanted to die. At some point, she was bound to succeed or at least partly succeed. I hesitated. It was now or never. I'm not so sure that's true, I said. I don't think it was a suicide attempt. You think it was an accident? No, I don't think it was an accident. Diomedes gave me a curious look. What are you trying to say, Theo? What other alternative is there? Well, to start with, I don't believe Yuri gave Alicia the drugs. You mean Christian is mistaken? No, I said Christian is lying. Diomedes and Stephanie stared at me, shocked. I went on before they could recover their power of speech. I quickly told them everything that I had read in Alicia's diary, that Christian had been treating Alicia privately before Gabriel's murder, that she was one of several private patients he saw unofficially, and not only had he not come forward to testify at the trial, he had pretended not to know Alicia when she was admitted to the Grove. No wonder he was so against any attempt to get her talking again. I said, if she did speak, she would be in a position to expose him. Stephanie stared at me blankly. But what are you seeing? You can't seriously be suggesting that he— Yes, I am suggesting it. It wasn't an overdose. It was an attempt to murder her. Where is Alicia's diary? Diomedes asked me. You have it in your possession? I shook my head. No, not anymore. I gave it back to Alicia. It must be in her room. Then we must retrieve it. He turned to Stephanie. But first, he said, I think we should call the police. Don't you? Chapter 19. From then on, things moved fast. Police officers swarmed all over the Grove, asking questions, taking photographs, sealing off Alicia's studio and her room. The investigation was led by Chief Inspector Stephen Allen, a heavy-set man with a bald head and large reading glasses that distorted his eyes, magnifying them and making them seem bigger than life, bulging with interest and curiosity. Allen listened with careful interest to my story. I told him everything I had said to Diomedes, and I showed him my supervision notes. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Faber, he said. Call me Theo. I'd like you to make an official statement, please, and I'll be talking to you more in due course. Yes, certainly. Inspector Allen showed me out of Diomedes' office, which he had commandeered. After I made my statement to a junior officer, I hung around in the corridor waiting, and soon enough, Christian was led to the door by a police officer. He looked uneasy, scared, and guilty. I felt satisfied he would soon be charged. There was nothing else to do now except wait. On my way out of the Grove, I passed the Goldfish Bowl. I glanced inside. What I saw stopped me in my tracks. A leaf was being slipped some drugs by Yuri and he was pocketing some cash. Olive charged out and fixed me with her one eye, a look of contempt and hatred. A leaf, I said. Olive marched off, disappearing around the corner. Then Yuri emerged from the Goldfish Bowl. As soon as he saw me, his jaw dropped. He stuttered with surprise. I didn't see you there. Obviously not. Elif forgot her medication. I was just giving it to her. I see, I said. So Yuri was dealing and supplying Elif. I wondered what else he was up to. Perhaps I'd been a little too hasty to defend him so determinedly to Stephanie. I'd better keep an eye on him. I wanted to ask you, he said, leading me away from the Goldfish Bowl. What should we do about Mr. Martin? What do you mean? I looked at him, surprised. You mean John Felix Martin? What about him? Well, he's been here for hours. He came this morning to visit Alicia, and he's been waiting since then. What? Why didn't you tell me? You mean he's been here all this time? Sorry. It slipped my mind with everything that happened. He's in the waiting room. I see. Well, I'd better go and talk to him. I hurried downstairs to the reception, thinking about what I just heard. What was John Felix doing here? I wondered what he wanted, what it meant. I went into the waiting room and looked around, but no one was there. Chapter 20. I left the Grove and lit a cigarette. I heard a man's voice calling my name. I looked up, expecting it to be John Felix, but it wasn't him. It was Max Berenson. He was getting out of a car and charging towards me. What the __, he shouted. What happened? Max's face was bright red, contorted with anger. They just called me and told me about Alicia. What happened to her? I took a step backwards. I think you need to calm down, Mr. Berenson. Calm down. My sister-in-law is lying in there in a __, coma because of your negligence. Max's hand was clenched in a fist. He raised it. I thought he was going to throw a punch at me, But he was interrupted by Tanya. She hurried over, looking just as angry as he was, but angry with Max, not me. "Stop it, Max," she said. "For Christ's sake, aren't things bad enough? It's not Theo's fault." Max ignored her and turned back to me. His eyes were wild. "Alicia was in your care," he shouted. "How did you let it happen? How?" Max's eyes filled with angry tears. He was making no attempt to disguise his emotions. He stood there crying. I glanced at Tanya, and it was obvious she knew about his feelings for Alicia. Tanya looked dismayed and drained. Without another word, she turned and went back to their car. I wanted to get away from Max as fast as possible. I kept walking. He kept shouting abuse. I thought he was going to follow, but he didn't. He was rooted to the spot. A broken man calling after me, yelling piteously, "I hold you responsible. My poor Alicia. My girl. My poor Alicia. You'll pay for this. You hear me?" Max kept on shouting, but I ignored him. Soon, his voice faded into silence. I was alone. I kept walking. Chapter 21. I walked back to the house where Kathy's lover lived. I stood there for an hour watching. Eventually, the door opened and he emerged. I watched him leave. Where was he going? To meet Kathy? I hesitated but decided not to follow him. Instead, I stayed watching the house. I watched his wife through the windows. As I watched, I felt increasingly sure I had to do something to help her. She was me and I was her. We were two innocent victims, deceived and betrayed. She believed this man loved her, but he didn't. Perhaps I was wrong. Assuming she knew nothing about the affair. Perhaps she did know. Perhaps they enjoyed a sexually open relationship, and she was equally promiscuous. But somehow I didn't think so. She looked innocent as I had once looked. It was my duty to enlighten her. I could reveal the truth about the man she was living with, whose bed she shared. I had no choice. I had to help her. Over the next few days, I kept returning. One day she left the house and went for a walk. I followed her, keeping my distance. I was worried she saw me at one point, but even if she did, I was just a stranger to her for the moment. I went away and made a couple of purchases. I came back again. I stood across the road watching the house. I saw her again standing by the window. I didn't have a plan as such, just a vague, unformed idea of what I needed to accomplish. Rather, like an inexperienced artist, I knew the result I wanted without knowing quite how to achieve it. I waited a while, then walked up to the house. I tried the gate. It was unlocked. It swung open and I stepped into the garden. I felt a sudden rush of adrenaline, an illicit thrill of being an intruder on someone else's property. Then I saw the back door opening. I looked for somewhere to hide. I noticed the little summer house across the grass. I raced silently across the lawn and slipped inside. I stood there for a second, catching my breath, my heart pounding. Had she seen me? I heard her footsteps approaching. Too late to back out now. I reached into my back pocket and took out the black balaclava I'd bought. I pulled it over my head. I put on a pair of gloves. She walked in. She was on the phone. "Okay, darling," she said. "I'll see you at 8. "Yes, I love you too." She ended the call and switched on an electric fan. She stood in front of the fan, her hair blowing in the breeze. She picked up a paintbrush and approached a canvas on an easel. She stood with her back to me. Then, she caught sight of my reflection in the window. I think she saw my knife first. She stiffened and slowly turned round. Her eyes were wide with fear. We stared at each other in silence. This was the first time I came face to face with Alicia Berenson. The rest, as they say, is history. Part 5. If I justify myself, mine own mouth shall condemn me. Job Chapter 920. Chapter 1. Alicia Berenson's Diary. 23rd of February. Theo just left. I'm alone. I'm writing this as fast as I can. I haven't got much time. I've got to get this down while I still have the strength. I thought I was crazy at first. It was easier to think I was crazy than believe it was true. But I'm not crazy. I'm not. That first time I met him in the therapy room, I wasn't sure. There was something familiar about him, but different. I recognized his eyes, not just the color, but the shape and the same smell of cigarettes and smoky aftershave and the way he formed words and the rhythm of his speech, but not the tone of his voice. It seemed different somehow. So I wasn't sure. The next time we met, he gave himself away. He said the same words, the exact same phrase he'd used at the house burned into my memory. I want to help you. I want to help you see clearly. As soon as I heard that, something in my brain clicked and the jigsaw came together. The picture was complete. It was him, and something in me took over. Some kind of wild animal instinct. I wanted to kill him, kill or be killed. I leapt on him and tried to strangle him and scratch his eyes out, bash his skull to pieces on the floor, but I didn't succeed in killing him. And they held me down and drugged me and locked me up. And then after that, I lost my nerve. I started to doubt myself again. Maybe I'd made a mistake. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe it wasn't him. How could it possibly be Theo? What purpose could he have in coming here to taunt me like this? And then I understood. All that about wanting to help me, that was the sickest part of it. He was getting a kick out of it. He was getting off on it. That's why he was here. He had come back to gloat. I want to help you. I want to help you see clearly. Well, now I saw clearly. I wanted him to know that I knew. So I lied about the way Gabriel died. As I was talking, I could see he knew I was lying. We looked at each other and he saw it that I had recognized him. And there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. He was afraid of me, of what I might say. He was scared of the sound of my voice. That's why he came back a few minutes ago. He didn't say anything this time. No more words. He grabbed my wrist and stuck a needle in my vein. I didn't struggle. I didn't fight back. I let him do it. I deserve it. I deserve this punishment. I am guilty. So is he. That's why I'm writing this. So he won't get away with it. So he will be punished. Got to be quick. Can feel it now. The stuff he injected me with. It's working. I'm so drowsy. I want to lie down. I want to sleep. But no, not yet. I got to stay awake. Got to finish the story. And this time I'll tell the truth. That night Theo broke into the house and tied me up. And when Gabriel came home, Theo knocked him out. At first I thought he'd killed him, but then I saw Gabriel was breathing. Theo pulled him up and tied him to the chair. He moved it. So Gabriel and I were sitting back to back and I couldn't see his face. Please, I said. Please don't hurt him. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Anything you want. Theo laughed. I come to hate his laugh so much. It was cold, empty, heartless. Hurt him. He shook his head. I'm going to kill him. He meant it. I felt such terror. I lost control of my tears. I wept and pleaded. I'll do anything you want. Anything. Please. Please let him live. He deserves to live. He's the kindest to the best of men, and I love him. I love him so much. Tell me, Alicia. Tell me about your love for him. Tell me, do you think he loves you? He loves me, I said. I heard the clock ticking in the background. There seemed to be an age before he replied. We'll see, he said. His black eyes stared at me for a second, and I felt consumed by darkness. I was in the presence of a creature that wasn't even human. He was evil. He walked around the chair and faced Gabriel. I turned my head as far as I could, but I couldn't see them. There was a horrible dull thud. I flinched as I heard him strike Gabriel across the face. He hit him again and again until Gabriel started sputtering and woke up. Hello, Gabriel. Who the underserved are you? I'm a married man, Theo said. So, I know what it's like to love someone, and I know what it's like to be let down. What the underserved are you talking about? Only cowards betray the people who love them. Are you a coward, Gabriel? Underserved. I was going to kill you, but Alicia pleaded for your life. So instead, I'm going to give you a choice. Either you die or Alicia does. You decide. The way he spoke was so cool and calm and in control. No emotion. Gabriel didn't reply for a second. He sounded out of breath, like he'd been punched. No. Yes. Alicia dies or you die. Your choice. Gabriel, let's find out how much you love her. Would you die for her? You have 10 seconds to decide. 10-9 Don't believe him. I said he's going to kill us both. I love you. 87 I know you love me, Gabriel. 65 you love me. For 3 Gabriel say you love me. 2. And then Gabriel spoke. I didn't recognize his voice at first. Such a tiny voice so far away. Little boy's voice. A small child with the power of life and death at his fingertips. I don't want to die, he said. Then there was silence. Everything stopped inside my body. Every cell deflated, wilting cells like dead petals falling from a flower. Jasmine flowers floating to the ground. Can I smell jasmine somewhere? Yes. Yes, sweet jasmine. On the windowsill, perhaps. Theo stepped away from Gabriel and started talking to me. I found it hard to focus on his words. You see, Alicia, I knew Gabriel was a coward. _ my wife behind my back. He destroyed the only happiness I've ever had. Theo leant forward right in my face. I'm sorry to do this, but quite frankly, now you know the truth. You're better off dead. He raised the gun and pointed it at my head. I shut my eyes. I heard Gabriel screaming, "Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Don't!" A click and then a gunshot. So loud that it blew away all other sound. There was silence for a few seconds. I thought I was dead, but I wasn't so lucky. I opened my eyes. Theo was still there pointing the gun at the ceiling. He smiled. He put his finger to his lips, telling me to keep quiet. Alicia, Gabriel shouted. Alicia. I could hear Gabriel writhing in his chair, trying to turn around to see what had happened. What did you do to her? You bastard. You _ bastard. Oh Jesus. Theo untied my wrists. He dropped the gun to the floor. Then he kissed me ever so gently on the cheek. He walked out and the front door slammed after him. Gabriel and I were alone. He was sobbing, crying, barely able to form words. He just kept calling my name, wailing. Alicia. I remained silent. Alicia. _ Oh. I remained silent. Alicia, answer me. Alicia. Oh God. I remained silent. How could I talk? Gabriel had sentenced me to death. The dead don't talk. I untied the wire around my ankles. I got up from the chair. I reached down to the floor. My fingers closed around the gun. It was hot and heavy in my hand. I walked around the chair and I faced Gabriel. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. His eyes widened. Alicia, you're alive in God. I wish I could say I struck a blow for the defeated. That I was standing up for the betrayed and broken-hearted. That Gabriel had a tyrant's eyes, my father's eyes. But I'm past lying now. The truth is Gabriel had my eyes suddenly. And I had his. Somewhere along the way we had swapped places. I saw it now. I would never be safe, never be loved. All my hopes dashed. All my dreams shattered. Leaving nothing. Nothing. My father was right. I didn't deserve to live. I was nothing. That's what Gabriel did to me. That's the truth. I didn't kill Gabriel. He killed me. All I did was pull the trigger. Chapter 2. There is nothing so pitiful, Indira said, as seeing all someone's possessions in a cardboard box. I nodded. I looked around the room sadly. Surprising really went on. How few things Alicia had when you think how much junk the other patients accumulate. All she had was some books, a few drawings, her clothes. Indira and I were clearing out Alicia's room on Stephanie's instructions. It's unlikely she'll ever wake up, Stephanie had said, and quite frankly, we need the bed. We worked in silence, mostly deciding what to put in storage and what to throw away. I carefully looked through her belongings. I wanted to make sure there was nothing incriminating, nothing that might trip me up. I wondered how Alicia had managed to keep her diary hidden and out of sight for so long. Each patient was allowed to bring a small number of personal items with them upon admittance to the Grove. Alicia had brought a portfolio of sketches, which I presume was how she had smuggled in the diary. I opened the portfolio and flicked through the drawings. They were mostly unfinished pencil sketches and studies. A few casual lines thrown onto a page immediately coming to life, brilliantly evocative, capturing an unmistakable likeness. I showed a sketch to Indira. It's you, I said. What? It's not. It is. Is it? Indira looked delighted and studied it closely. Do you think so? I never noticed her drawing me. I wonder when she did it. It's good. Isn't it? Yes, it is. You should keep it. Indira pulled her face and handed it back. I couldn't do that. Of course you can. She wouldn't mind. I smiled. No one will ever know. I suppose not. She glanced at the painting upright on the floor, leaning against the wall. The painting of me and Alicia on the fire escape of the burning building that had been defaced by a leaf. What about that? Indira asked. Will you take it? I shook my head. I'll call John Felix. He can take charge of it. Indira nodded. Shame you can't keep it. I looked at it for a moment. I didn't like it. Of all of Alicia's paintings, it was the only one I didn't like. Strange considering it had me as its subject. I want to be clear. I never thought Alicia would shoot Gabriel. This is an important point. I never intended nor expected her to kill him. All I wanted was to awaken Alicia to the truth about her marriage as I had been awakened. I intended to show her that Gabriel didn't love her, that her life was a lie, their marriage a sham. Only then would she have a chance, as I had, to build a new life from the rubble, a life based on truth, not lies. I had no idea about Alicia's history of instability. Had I known, I never would have pushed things so far. I had no idea she would react like that. And when the story was all over the press and Alicia was on trial for murder, I felt a deep sense of personal responsibility and the desire to expedite my guilt and prove that I was not responsible for what happened. So I applied for the job at the Grove. I wanted to help her through the aftermath of the murder, help her understand what had happened, work through it, and be free. Of course, if you were cynical, you might say I revisited the scene of the crime, so to speak, to cover my tracks. That's not true. Even though I knew the risks of such an endeavor, the very real possibility that I might get caught, that it might end in disaster, I had no choice because of who I am. I am a psychotherapist, remember. Alicia needed help, and only I knew how to help her. I was nervous she might know me despite having worn the mask and disguised my voice. But Alicia didn't seem to recognize me, and I was able to play a new part in her life. And then that night in Cambridge, I finally understood what I had unwittingly reenacted, the long-forgotten landmine on which I had trodden. Gabriel was the second man to condemn Alicia to death. Bringing up this original trauma was more than she could bear, which is why she picked up the gun and visited her long-awaited revenge not upon her father, but upon her husband. As I suspected, the murder had much older, deeper origins than my actions. But when she lied to me about how Gabriel died, it was obvious Alicia had recognized me, and she was testing me. I was forced to take action to silence Alicia forever. I had Christian take the blame. Poetic justice, I felt. I had no qualms about framing him. Christian had failed Alicia when she needed him the most. He deserved to be punished. Silencing Alicia wasn't so easy. Injecting her with morphine was the hardest thing I've ever done. The fact she didn't die but is asleep is better. This way I can still visit her every day and sit by her bed and hold her hand. I haven't lost her. Are we done? Asked Indira, interrupting my thoughts. I think so. Good. I have to go. I have a patient at 12. Go ahead, I said. See you at lunch. Yes. Indira gave my arm a squeeze and left. I looked at my watch. I thought about leaving early, going home. I felt exhausted. I was about to turn off the light and leave when a thought occurred to me and I felt my body stiffen. The diary. Where was it? My eyes flickered around the room, neatly packed and boxed up. We'd gone through it all. I had looked at and considered each and every one of her personal items, and it wasn't there. How could I have been so careless? It was Indira and her friendless, inane chatter. She had distracted me and made me lose focus. Where was it? It had to be here. Without the diary, there was precious little evidence to convict Christian. I had to find it. I searched the room, feeling increasingly frantic. I turned the cardboard boxes upside down, scattering their contents on the floor. I rummaged through the debris, but it wasn't there. I tore apart her clothing, but found nothing. I ripped open the art portfolio, shaking the sketches to the floor, but the diary wasn't among them. Then I went through the cupboards and pulled out all the drawers, checking they were empty, then hurling them aside, but it wasn't there. Chapter 3. Julian McMahon from the Trust was waiting for me in the reception. He had a big build, curly ginger hair, and a fondness for phrases like between you and me or at the end of the day or the bottom line, which frequently popped up in his conversation, often in the same sentence. He was essentially a benign figure, the friendly face of the trust. He wanted to have a word with me before I went home. I've just come from Professor Damda, he said. I thought you should know he's resigned. Ah, I see. He took early retirement. Between you and me, it was either that or face an inquiry into this mess. He shrugged. I can't help but feel sorry for him. Not a particularly glorious end to a long and distinguished career, but at least this way he'll be spared the press and all the hoo-ha. Incidentally, he mentioned you, Diomedes. Yes, he suggested we give you his job. Julian winked. He said you were the perfect man for it. I smiled. That's very kind. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, given what happened to Alicia and Christian's arrest, there's simply no question of keeping the Grove open. We're closing it down permanently. I can't say I'm surprised. So, in fact, there's no job to be had. Well, the bottom line is this. We're planning to open a new, much more cost-effective psychiatric service here in the next few months, and we'd like you to consider running it, Theo. It was hard to conceal my excitement. I agreed with pleasure. Between you and me, I said, borrowing one of his phrases. It's the kind of opportunity that I dream about, and it was a chance to actually help people, not just medicate them. Help them the way I believe they should be helped, the way Ruth helped me. And I tried to help Alicia. Things have worked out well for me. I'd be ungrateful not to acknowledge that. It seems I've got everything I wanted. Well, almost. Last year, Kathy and I moved out of central London to Surrey, back to where I grew up. After my father died, he left me the house, although it remained my mother's to live in until she died. She decided to give it to us, and she moved into a care home. Kathy and I thought the extra space and a garden would be worth the commute into London. I thought it would be good for us. We promised ourselves we would transform the house and made plans to redecorate and exorcise. But nearly a year since we moved in, the place remains unfinished, half-decorated. The pictures and convex mirror we bought in Portortuello Market still propped up against unpainted walls. It remains very much the house I grew up in, but I don't mind the way I thought I would. In fact, I feel quite at home, which is ironic. I arrived at the house and let myself in. I quickly took off my coat. It was sweltering like a greenhouse. I turned down the thermostat in the hallway. Kathy loves being hot, while I much prefer being cold, so temperature is one of our little battlegrounds. I could hear the TV from the hallway. Kathy seems to watch a lot of TV these days, a never-ending soundtrack of garbage that underscores our life in this house. I found her in the living room curled up on the sofa. She had a giant bag of prawn cocktail crisps on her lap and was fishing them out with sticky red fingers and shoveling them into her mouth. She's always eating crap like that. It's not surprising she's gained weight recently. She hasn't been working much in the past couple of years, and she's become quite withdrawn. Depressed even. Her doctor wanted to put her on antidepressants, but I discouraged it. I advocated getting a therapist and talking through her feelings. I even offered to find her a shrink myself, but Kathy doesn't want to talk, it seems. Sometimes I catch her looking at me strangely and wonder what she's thinking. Is she trying to summon up the courage to tell me about Gabriel and the affair? But she doesn't say a word. She just sits in silence like Alicia used to. I wish I could help her, but I can't seem to reach her. That's the terrible irony. I did all this to keep Kathy, and I've lost her anyway. I perched on the armrest and watched her a moment. A patient of mine took an overdose, I said. She's in a coma. No reaction. It looks as though another member of staff may have administered the overdose deliberately. A colleague? No reaction. Are you listening to me? Kathy gave a brief shrug. I don't know what to say. Some sympathy might be nice. For who? For you? For her? I've been seeing her for a while in individual therapy. Her name is Alicia Berenson. I glanced at her as I said this. Kathy didn't react. Not even a flicker of emotion. I went on. She's famous or infamous. Everyone was talking about her a few years ago. She killed her husband. Remember? No, not really. She shrugged and changed the channel. And so we continue our game of let's pretend. I seem to do a lot of pretending these days for a lot of people, including myself, which is why I'm writing this, I suppose, an attempt to bypass my monstrous ego and access the truth about myself, if that's possible. I needed a drink. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a shot of vodka from the freezer. It burned my throat as I swallowed it. I poured another. I wondered what Ruth would say if I were to go and find her again, as I did 6 years ago, and confess all this to her, but I knew it was impossible. That I was altogether a different kind of creature now, a guiltier thing, less capable of honesty. How could I sit opposite that frail old lady and look into those watery blue eyes that held me safe for so long and gave me nothing but decency, kindness, truth, and reveal how foul I am, how cruel, how vengeful and perverse, how unworthy I am of Ruth and everything she tried to do for me? How could I tell her that I have destroyed 3 lives, that I have no moral code, that I'm capable of the worst kind of acts without remorse, and my only concern is for my own skin? Even worse than the shock or repulsion, or possibly even fear in Ruth's eyes as I told her this, would be the look of sadness, disappointment, and self-reproach. Because not only had I let her down, I know she would be thinking she had let me down. And not just me, but the talking cure itself. For no therapist ever had a better shot at it than Ruth. She had years to work with someone who was damaged, yes, but so young, just a boy, and so willing to change, to get better, to heal. And yet, despite hundreds of hours of psychotherapy, talking and listening and analyzing, she was unable to save his soul. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps some of us are simply born evil, and despite our best efforts, we remain that way. The doorbell rang, rousing me from my thoughts. It wasn't a common occurrence, an evening visitor. Not since moving to Surrey. I couldn't even remember the last time we'd had friends over. "Are you expecting someone?" I called out, but there was no reply. Kathy probably couldn't hear me over the TV. I went to the front door and opened it. To my surprise, it was Chief Inspector Allen. He was wrapped up in a scarf and coat, and his cheeks were flushed. "Good evening, Mr. Faber," he said. "Inspector Allen, what are you doing here?" "I happened to be in the neighborhood and thought I'd pop in. A couple of developments I wanted to tell you about is now convenient." I hesitated. "To be honest, I'm just about to cook dinner, so this won't take long." Allen smiled. He clearly wasn't going to take no for an answer, so I stepped aside and let him enter. He looked happy to be inside. He pulled off his gloves and his coat. "It's getting bloody cold out there," he said. "Cold enough to snow, I'd bet." His glasses had steamed up, and he took them off and wiped them with his handkerchief. "I'm afraid it's rather warm in here," I said. "Not for me. Can't be too warm for my liking. You'd get on with my wife." "Right on cue." Kathy appeared in the hallway. She looked from me to the inspector quizzically. "What's going on, Kathy?" "This is Chief Inspector Allen. He's in charge of the investigation about the patient I mentioned." "Good evening, Mrs. Faber. Inspector Allen wants to talk to me about something. We won't be long. Go upstairs and have your bath, and I'll call you when dinner's ready." I nodded at the inspector to go into the kitchen. "After you," I said. Inspector Allen glanced at Kathy again before he turned and went into the kitchen. I followed him, leaving Kathy lingering in the hallway before I heard her footsteps slowly going upstairs. "Can I get you something to drink?" I asked. "Thank you. That's very kind. A cup of tea would be lovely." I saw his eyes go to the bottle of vodka on the counter. I smiled. "Or something stronger if you prefer." "No, thank you. A cup of tea suits me just fine." "How'd you take it?" "Strong, please. Just enough milk to color it. No sugar. I'm trying to give up." As he spoke, my mind drifted, wondering what he was doing here, and if I should be nervous. His manner was so genial it was hard not to feel safe. Besides, there was nothing that could trip me up. I switched on the kettle and turned to face him. "So, Inspector, what was it you wanted to talk to me about?" "Well, about Mr. Martin, mainly John Felix." "Really? That surprised me. What about him?" "Well, he came to the Grove to collect Alicia's art materials, and we got talking about one thing and another. Interesting man, Mr. Martin. He's planning a retrospective of Alicia's work. He seems to think now is a good time to reevaluate her as an artist." Given all the publicity, I dare say he's right. Alan gave me an appraising look. You might want to write about her, sir. I'm sure there'll be interest in a book or something like that. I hadn't considered it, I said. What exactly has John Felix retrospective got to do with me, Inspector? Well, Mr. Martin was particularly excited to see the new painting. He didn't seem concerned that Olive defaced it. He said it added a special quality to it. I can't remember the exact words he used. I don't know much about art myself. Do you? Not really. I wondered how long it was going to take him to get to the point, and why I was feeling increasingly uneasy. Anyway, he went on. Mr. Martin was admiring the picture, and he picked it up to look at it more closely, and there it was. What was this? He pulled out something from inside his jacket. I recognized it at once. The diary. The kettle boiled and a shriek filled the air. I switched it off and poured some boiling water into the mug. I stirred it and noticed my hand was trembling slightly. Oh good, I said. I wondered where it was. Wedged in the back of the painting, he said. In the top left corner of the frame. It was jammed in tight. So that's where she hid it, I thought. The back of the painting that I hated. The one place I didn't look. The inspector stroked the creased, faded black cover and smiled. He opened it and looked through the pages. Fascinating. The arrows, the confusion. I nodded. A portrait of a disturbed mind. Inspector Allen flicked through the pages to the end, and then he started reading from it aloud. He was scared of the sound of my voice. He grabbed my wrist and stuck a needle in my vein. I felt a sudden rising panic. I didn't know those words. I hadn't read that entry. It was the incriminating evidence I had been looking for, and it was in the wrong hands. I wanted to snatch the diary from Allen and tear out the pages, but I couldn't move. I was trapped. I started stammering. I really think it's better if I spoke too nervously, and he heard the fear in my voice. Yes. Nothing. I made no further attempt to stop him. Any action I took would be viewed as incriminating anyway. There was no way out. And the strangest thing is I felt relieved. You know, I don't believe you happen to be in my neighborhood at all, Inspector, I said, handing him his tea. No, you're quite right. I thought it best not to announce the intention of my visit on the doorstep. But the fact is this puts things in a rather different light. I'm curious to hear it, I heard myself saying. Will you read it aloud? Very well. I felt strangely calm as I sat in the chair by the window. He cleared his throat and began. Theo just left. The inspector read. I am alone. I'm writing this as fast as I can. As I listened, I looked up at the white clouds drifting past. Finally, they had opened. It had started to snow. Snowflakes were falling outside. I opened the window and reached out my hand. I caught a snowflake. I watched it disappear, vanish from my fingertip. I smiled and I went to catch another one. Music, and now an interview with the author. Music. Hi, this is Mary Beth Roach. I'm the publisher at Macmillan Audio, and I'm here today with Alex Michaelide, the author of The Silent Patient. Hi, Mary Beth. So I'm really interested. I know that you've been a screenwriter for film. What was the experience like writing a novel? How was it different writing for the page rather than for the screen? Well, I think when I set out to write the book, I felt very much that I wanted it to be a novel and not a film, in waiting. So I tried to think of it very much as a book. And a friend of mine is a critic, and he gave me some really helpful advice a few years ago. He said that the books are about expansion, whereas films are about contraction. And that really helped me because it meant that in a book I was able to slow things down and go down a rabbit hole if I wanted to, or spend longer with a character and really kind of tease it out. Whereas in a film you feel the need is to get on with it and keep the story moving as fast as possible. I think so. It was a real pleasure being able to just focus on the details, the minutiae of someone's life and their thoughts and and their whole world really. So talk to me a little bit about your process this book. So exciting. It's filled with so many twists and turns. I think so many red herrings. What was your process like? Did you have it all plotted? Did you know the end when you began? I did. I mean, it comes from the myth of the Alcestis, which I grew up in Cyprus, so there's a lot of influence of Greek myths, and I had been obsessed with this story of this woman who comes back from death and then never speaks, and it's a bit of a problematic play, and it's not staged that often. It's by Euripides, mainly because of that reason, because people don't really fully understand her silence at the end of the play, and it had haunted me my whole life, and so I experimented with it in various forms. First I wrote it as a play, and then I tried updating it as a short film, and then I just let it sit in my unconscious for many years, and then it kind of came out pretty fully formed. Then I just plotted and plotted and plotted it, and then started writing it. There was no deadline. So it was a very pleasurable experience. I have to say it was the happiest writing experience I've ever had. So I know that the Greek myth Alcestis is obviously very important to the book. How did you first get interested in that? Well, growing up in Cyprus, the Greek myths are very much part of the culture. They are staged, the plays were staged, repeatedly. You learn about it at school. You're taught Homer at a very young age. And so I was very aware of the plays, particularly Euripides and his female characters. And I see a very direct line from Euripides to Tennessee Williams, and who I also love. The myth itself, I don't quite remember how I first came across it. I was very young. I was about 12, I think, when I read it first time. And then again at university, I went to Cambridge, and there's a big emphasis on Greek tragedy, and so I had the opportunity of studying the plays much more closely, and they're just incredible stories, and I think the myths are very much part of our universal unconscious and very powerful and evocative, and they're also just great stories, in terms of human drama. So I think that's been a big influence for me for sure. Yeah. So, I know you also had a part-time job in a psychiatric unit. Yes. Talk to me a little bit about that and how that influenced the book. I had always been very interested in therapy, and I had been in therapy myself about twice a week for a period of about 10 years. My sister is a psychiatrist, and so it's always been something that we talk about, and then I decided I wanted to study it. So I started studying at a postgraduate level at a couple of places. And while I was there, I got a part-time job in a secure unit for teenagers, which I then started spending more and more time at this unit, and it became one of the most, formative, powerful experiences of my life, and I only actually left because the unit got shut down because of government cuts. But it provided the inspiration for the book. I didn't realize it at the time, but later on when I was thinking about if I were to write a detective story, I would need a good location. And one of the things I love about Agatha Christie, I don't know if we'll talk about her a little bit too, is always the confined, brilliant location that she comes up with. And I thought, oh, well, I know about the secure unit, so I could set something there, Well, that's a great transition to another question about sort of what writers have inspired you. I am very much into, I suppose in terms of the kind of thing that I write. When I grew up in Cyprus, there was nothing to do in the summers apart from read, and so I would go to the beach and I would devour Agatha Christie's, and I would read, I don't know, one every 3 days or so, and I read them all. And that was probably the happiest time of my life, really. And so when I wanted to write the kind of novel that I wanted to read, I thought I wanted to replicate that experience and write something that I could read on the beach. And so I wanted to kind of take the kind of Christie plot that I love and marry it with a deeper psychological complexity, I suppose. She has been a massive influence on me. Other writers like Dorothy Elsa, P.D. James, Ruth Rendell, they've all had a big effect on me, mainly women actually. I also love Margaret Atwood and Angela Carter, too. So that's great. And what a wonderful way to think about your sort of childhood. You're in some ways you may have felt unlucky that, the only thing you had to do is read. But how great for you. Well, what was nice was that when I actually got the book to a place that I was happy with, I did print out a little small version of it, and I took it to the beach and I read it over a period of 5 days, and I really enjoyed the experience, and I thought, okay, it's ready now to show somebody. So it was good. It was good to kind of set myself that goal, and then, all these years later actually achieve it. Felt very satisfying. So, talk to me a little bit, again about your process. I know, that you've mentioned that you read the book out loud. We're talking about this for the audiobook. Did you imagine voices for the characters as you were creating them for the page? Yes, I suppose so. I mean, I'm a big fan of Alan Bennett, particularly his readings of his own work. And so the rhythm and the musicality of his speech was very much in my head, strange as that may sound. So before I sent the book to my agent, I read it out loud, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, I think over a period of about 2 weeks. And it was extraordinary the effect it had on it in terms of taking out words or putting in ends or putting in commas and things like that. It really made a huge difference to read it out loud, which is something I'll definitely do next time as well. And I'm sure the narrators are very grateful. I hope so. So two of the characters in the book, including the title character, are artists. How did you learn about their world? I used to paint a lot when I was a teenager. And I had private art lessons every Saturday with an amazing artist in Cyprus, and I would go to his house and he would set up still lives and we'd spend all afternoon sort of painting. So I really have always loved art. And I don't necessarily think an artist is that dissimilar to a writer in terms of, temperament or, the kind of world you inhabit. And so I just try to use my imagination really to put myself into Alicia's head and think about the paintings. I was influenced also a lot by Cat's Eye, which is one of my favorite books by Margaret Atwood, where the other heroine is a painter. And I have been loving that book since I was about 12, I suppose. And so it definitely affected the way that I thought about art and the representation of art in a novel, the paintings themselves and how they were key into the artist's subconscious and that kind of thing. Psychological thrillers have been having really quite a moment of late. Did any of them inspire your writing? And then you have talked about, other authors that have inspired your writing. Yeah. To be honest, I don't really read a lot of psychological thrillers. I like Golden Age detective fiction very much. But in terms of modern psychological thrillers, I think I'm really scared of being influenced. And the word, the phrase psychological thriller is a label that was put on the book by other people. When I wrote it, I didn't think of it in those terms. I just thought of it as a novel. And I was surprised that the word thriller is used, if I'm honest, because it feels like a slow, suspenseful story. I tried to think of it in terms of Hitchcock was also in my head a great deal. I love his work. I love Vertigo. I think of the book as a very sad book. So it's that what really interested me. What I wanted to try and do was to have a very strong whodunit kind of murder mystery plot, and then on top of it put all of the emotions that I think are, fascinating, like obsession and betrayal and lost love and all these kinds of feelings that Theo goes through, and that's the stuff that really interested me. I enjoyed writing the most, I think. Well, I think that's why people have been responding the way they are, that there's a real richness to it. Okay, great. Good. The plot is stunning and the twists and the turns are captivating and thrilling. But there's a richness to the characters and their lives and the story. That's great to hear. Thank you. That's what interests me as a writer. I enjoy, the mathematical aspect of coming up with a plot and then planning it. But then on top of it, it's the emotions that I think are what you connect to as a writer and a reader. Anyway, thanks, Alex. This was great. Thanks so much for joining me. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much. We hope you've enjoyed The Silent Patient, a Macmillan audio production from Celadone Books. Production supervised by Catherine Carroll. Text copyright 2018 by Astromere Limited. Production copyright 2018 by Orion Publishing Group Limited. All rights reserved. Music